before you sent it.
Oh, yeah. I put together some stuff. I realized I hadn't looked at my phone much lately, so I hurried and answered when I realized I should have answered yesterday. But
Well, join the crowd. Well, I'm a little off today. I worked at that bar last night, and they had they're cleaning the walls. So I was like a drunk last night with I have a chemical hangover. I don't have an alcohol hangover.
oh, yeah, that's worse.
Mm.
You don't get to enjoy the chemical hangover.
No.
The first time around.
No, you don't. At least not the kind of chemicals I was sniffing.
All right, Debbie's doing some freeze drying right now, so I'm going to try to find a more quiet space around here.
You guys have a freeze dryer?
Yeah, and I don't know what she put in there, but they might be herbs, or I don't know what's in there right now. But you can hear it. It's kind of loud.
Yeah, no, we have one. I know how loud it is.
Yeah. All right, let me see if I can find a space somewhere.
Mm.
Yeah, I've been looking at a bunch of different things recently. Actually, I'm not doing too much because I should be able to hit print maybe by Friday.
Cool.
Regarding the back half of the book, I'm going to probably take it over to Office Mac and have them do a front back for me after I do one last go through. So, and then have them bind it together so I can see what it looks like.
All right.
And then I can edit it one last time with it front back. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. See where the illustrations line up. Make sure that and that way I can go through and fix it in its book form.
Yeah.
At least the real detailed stuff, the fun stuff up front, I'm assembling now.
Uh-huh.
But that real heavy, dense,
supporting
material, the supportive material.
Yeah.
I'm going to have them actually make a copy for me before and make it so it's in a book form, so I can actually see how it lays out.
Nice. Yeah, you can't know until you see it physically.
No, having loose pages is not. I mean, they're laying all over the floor right now.
Yeah.
But I mean, it doesn't work.
Nope.
Real well.
No, having been a printer, I totally get you.
Yeah. All right. I think this will probably work for now. So I sent you some stuff, and it's really exciting stuff. The reason I say it's really exciting, not that everything else isn't always exciting at some point, but this is an easy one to grasp.
Okay.
And when you hear it, when you see it, you'll realize what's actually occurred, and that we've been duped.
Yeah.
Collectively, individually, all of that stuff, we've been duped. And we're suffering because of it, and because we're too ignorant or too intellectually lazy to really look into it. We've subjected ourselves to all kinds of crazy rules or laws or licensing, all that crap, and it's all based upon what we're going to talk about today.
Awesome. So It's a good thing I didn't get my letter sent.
Well, I don't know. I don't know what letter that is.
For the passport, where they told me they were changing my application to fit their records. Oh. And they did it without my agreement. I don't know. They didn't disclose what they changed. Oh. They just sent me a standard sheet that says, "Oh, by the way, we changed this."
Well, you know what? Here's what's interesting. So we have our granddaughter living with us while she goes to a junior college close by, and she has a sociology class. Now imagine a sociology class in this day and age. How fucked up what they're promoting will be. I'm talking all this goofy-ass, non-binary, pick and choose whatever you want to be. Reality has nothing to do with it anymore. Just completely disregard the truth of the matter and pretend. Because this world is nothing but pretend, and you can pretend to be a donkey when in fact you're truly just a jackass. You can pretend to be anything you want to be in this world now.
Yep. It's crazy.
I identify as an oak tree. Oh, okay.
Don't move then.
Yeah.
You can never move again. Only your arms.
So here's what's interesting, and I'm wrapping my head around how they gain how they're able to say, yeah, the public wants this. Yeah. The public wants this, so we're going to give it to them.
Yeah.
Now, try to wrap your head around this concept. She's in a class, and they're promoting absolute garbage. But the teacher writes a test, or is supplied with a test from the people trying to manipulate the population.
Right.
And he uses that test in his class. Now, the test, the way it's framed, makes it so you can't actually even respond to truth.
No.
I mean, you have to answer A, B, C, D regarding these preposterous propositions or ideas, and those are the only options on the test.
Yep.
So if you want to pass the class or even get a good grade in the class, you have to agree to take the test and to answer the questions that are on the test or framed within the test. The reason I'm saying that is because at the end of the test or at the beginning of the test, you have to sign your name.
Right.
So now they have your name, your signature, your authorization on a document, on a form, on a test that has you answering questions that are framed in a way that look like you agree with it.
Yep.
So all of the kids, all of the people, all the students in these classes all around the country are signing their name to this bullshit. And they can collect all these answers, all these tests, and say, listen, the population agrees that you can just pick and choose and be anything you want to be. They agree. Look at their signatures on these documents.
Right.
So the same thing occurs when we sign anything else, not knowing what's hidden in the verbiage or what's hidden in the fine print. They're getting us to agree to things.
Yep.
They're making it look like we're actually cognizant or aware or choosing this path when, in fact, they're just leading everybody down this path. And then they have the evidence by our own signature or authorizations. They have evidence to prove that this is what we want.
And so then that proves voluntary.
Now it sounds like it's a everything happening to us is now we volunteered for it.
That's really true.
I mean, that's all I could think of when she was explaining how the teacher, is expecting certain things. And I said, you can't even pass, if you're involved with truth, you can't even pass that course.
No, you can't stay in college if you...
You can't even stay in school, in college. I mean, she also told me that recently she ran across, where high schools and junior high schools are going to start having one locker room for boys and girls.
Oh, shit.
I mean, I can't tell you how stupid we are thinking that voting is going to change this.
Oh, yeah, that's really stupid.
I mean, thinking that, we're going to vote against this, we're going to vote for a Republican or vote for a Democrat, and we're going to stop this, what's happening.
Yeah.
No. It's not going to stop anything. It's your willful participation saying, by the way, and I know this sounds ridiculous, but I looked at the last presidential election. I don't vote. I won't participate in the mayhem that's being perpetrated on the population, the indigenous people. Yeah. I won't participate. But I looked at Biden and Trump. I looked at the tenets, what they were standing for. The list of everything Trump believed in and didn't believe in, and the list of things Biden believed in and didn't believe in. I may have said this on another recording, but when I looked at those lists, I actually found about 50% of everything Trump said I would agree with, and about 50% of everything Biden said I would agree with. And then, by the same token, about 50% of the rest of Trump I didn't agree with, and the rest of Biden I didn't agree with. So what they did is they have it putting you in an impossible situation, even when you think you're choosing.
So it's really no different than the multiple choice that your granddaughter.
It's exactly what's happening. So by you going and signing your name to a voter's registration and the outcome, you've agreed that whatever happens is okay. I don't agree with Biden. I don't agree with Trump. Well, if the other guy wins, you agree to put up with it just by participating.
Yep.
And finally, when it comes to the president, I mean, I said this years ago, too. And this is these are all an aside to where we're going today. But, I mean, do I really care what the president of the McDonald's Corporation does with his employees?
No.
No. By the same token, I don't give a shit what the president of whatever this corporation is does with his employees.
It's not my business.
It's none of my business. And that's what people don't understand is that when you're participating in this business as a corporate shareholder, voluntarily. By the way, shareholder, the word shareholder ends up, when you follow it, it goes to the word member. M-E-M-B-E-R, member.
Oh.
So obviously we know that the member that was cut off of you is the shareholder. And we don't know about that because we think that this is a real system, and we believe that nobody would create a system this harmful, this injurious to us.
Right.
It's almost impossible to fathom the criminal activity. That's been perpetrated upon the sleeping masses, or the trusting masses, maybe is a better word.
I think that's more the trusting. And so what word did they use to lock it in? Trust. Right.
And of course, trust and faith are the same. So, you know, when you have faith, it's implied that you trust. And by trusting, you're allowing a piece of your biology to be held accountable.
Yeah. I was listening to a call that Cedric sent me about this company that will, help you feel better, get healthy, that kind of thing. And they use peptides. But the other thing was they have a whole line of products, and he comes from the pharmaceutical industry, but thinks he's doing something outside of it. And the other part is all placental material.
Where'd they get that?
Exactly. I don't think he even thinks that far. And so here's where I went. If that is true, then not only do they need to keep us in this system for the money, here's where they need to keep us in it for the medical, so they can continue to get the placental material.
I saw a video this morning about cord blood, umbilical cord blood. First of all, this is a simple trespass.
Absolutely.
It's a simple trespass. The fact that there's an act of violence that produces this product. So it's a trespass via the violence, the cutting of the umbilical cord itself. And of course, it's a product of that act of violence. But just the fact that it's a trespass, and we're too stupid collectively to recognize what they have taken.
Yeah.
When they cut the cord and they take the extra embryonic material, they're taking the only evidence of our origin.
Yeah.
They're taking the evidence of our origin biologically. They're also taking evidence of the species, the origin of the species.
Yes.
So they're taking both the creative act, I'm going to call it an act of God, but they're also taking the product of that act of creation, which is the species itself, the origin of the species.
Yep.
And then they don't ever speak again of that small lowercase g Genesis. All we know is the capital G narrative Genesis.
That's right. Wow.
That's all that's offered to us. From that point forward, it's the church's narrative. The Roman Catholic Church is the Bible's narrative on Genesis, the origin, the Judeo-Christian origin of an idea.
Yes.
Not a living being.
And so from there, you can go to where your granddaughter is, where you can choose to be whatever you want because it's all a story.
It's all a story. It's all fake. It's all made up, and it's anything you want. Mm-hmm. That's how far they want to take this thing, because they don't want any reality. Mm-mm.
No.
And I think what they're doing is they're going to make this world so grotesque that people will be clamoring. They will be begging for some other leadership to come in and end it. Mm-hmm.
And they're going to make it worse.
and it'll be worse because they'll say, listen, we can fix this, but you got to agree to these terms. Yeah. But they're causing the problem. Obviously, they call this the Hegelian dialect.
Right.
But,
yeah. Well, even your granddaughter's experiencing the Hegelian dialect right in her classroom.
Right in her classroom. She can't even answer truthfully without being punished.
There can't be any discourse in that classroom. None.
Well, that's kind of, in a weird sort of way, that's kind of what I want to talk about today.
Yeah, that makes sense. I've looked at it a little bit.
I'm going to go to the first link, and this is all about what's called unjust enrichment. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to go to Cornell Law link. I'm there. And this is so interesting. My favorite of these links, by the way, is the Investopedia link. Uh-huh. And when we discuss that one, it's going to really become clear, what has occurred. We can go to it, but let's just at least get a definition first.
Okay.
Overview at Law Cornell link. It says unjust enrichment occurs when Party A confers a benefit upon Party B without Party A receiving the proper restitution required by law. This typically occurs in a contractual agreement when Party A fulfills his or her part of the agreement and Party B does not fulfill his or her part of the agreement. Now, this is going to seem really mixed up. It's going to be hard to understand until I give you an actual example. It says unjust enrichment is distinguished from a gift, as a gift is given without the reasonable expectation of receiving something in return. As such, when Party A gives Party B a gift, Party A has no legal recourse to receive something in return. So if something is actually given as a gift, you can't expect something. Right. A gift is not a tit for tat.
No.
I do this for you, you do that for me. Mm-hmm. That's a gift. There's no implication of receiving.
Yeah, of return, yeah.
Of any return whatsoever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I was reading earlier this morning a really interesting, simple way to look at this. So you're in your car and you pull up to an intersection in a city. And a guy comes over and he washes your windshield. He just conferred a benefit. He just washed your windshield. But did you ask for it?
No.
See, that's the benefit of his act, is the clean windshield. So you got something from this guy, but you never asked for it to begin with.
Right.
So he confers a benefit. But, of course, the guy on the street doing this is expecting something in return.
Yeah.
Are you obligated to do anything?
No.
But it looks like you received a benefit.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where this all goes.
Okay.
I think it's important because right now, automatically, you should be thinking the birth certificate.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The birth certificate. I mean, is it a gift?
No.
Or does it have benefit attached to it? Did you receive this thing, and is there a benefit? Let me go back to, I posted at Facebook the other day a question. All right?
Okay.
And this is actually getting a little bit ahead today, but the question was, did your fetal afterbirth get delivered to the wrong party?
Mm.
Did it get delivered? And that's the question. Did a piece of you get delivered to somebody else? And did they keep it? And are they receiving something? Did they benefit from that material? And we're going to get there.
Mm-hmm.
But that was the question I posed the other day because it just struck me.
Mm-hmm.
Because I didn't get it. Nobody ever delivered it to me.
Mm-mm.
You know?
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to go to the second link, which is the Wikipedia link.
Okay.
Unjust enrichment at Wikipedia.
I'm there.
It says, in laws of equity, well, that I have a problem with equity.
Yeah, it assumes two, at least.
Well, it assumes that there's a share of something.
Yeah, more than one. Yeah.
And if you have 100% of your biology, you don't share that with anybody.
Mm-mm.
Your biology is yours and yours alone. You can't, in fact, you really can't share it
Mm-mm.
without destroying the whole.
Mm-hmm.
It's called self-destruction, and of course, the church would actually call that suicide.
Mm-hmm.
So it says in laws of equity, unjust enrichment occurs when one person is enriched at the expense of another in circumstances that the law sees as unjust. Where an individual is unjustly enriched, the law imposes an obligation upon the recipient to make restitution, subject to defenses such as change of position. That's a defense, change of position.
So
Liability for an unjust or unjustified enrichment arises irrespective of wrongdoing on the part of the recipient. Let me say that again. Irrespective of wrongdoing on the part of the recipient.
the one who receives the enrichment.
The one who receives the benefit.
Mm-hmm.
The concept of unjust enrichment can be traced to Roman law and the maxim that no one should be benefited at another's expense. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
No one should be benefited at another's expense. Two more lines. It says, the law of unjust enrichment is closely related to, but not coextensive with, the law of restitution. The law of restitution is the law of gain-based recovery. It is wider than the law of unjust enrichment. Restitution for unjust enrichment is a subset of the law of restitution. In the same way that compensation for breach of contract is a subset of the law relating to compensation. Okay. Go back up to paragraph 1,
Mm-hmm.
and it says subject to defenses such as change of position.
Mm-hmm.
There's a hyperlink there.
Yeah.
Click on that.
I'm slow.
Yeah, mine's slow too. I don't know why it's not. Maybe I need to go back in the house real quick and... Did you get it yet?
Yeah, I got it. It came up.
I haven't yet, so... I'll go in the house for a second. Click on it again. It says Safari can't open page. Let me try it again. Okay, now it did it. I had to come in the house. And while I'm in here, I'll get another cup of coffee. Can you hear the freeze dryer?
I can't.
Oh, you really can't? That's pretty crazy. Yeah. Maybe there's a silence mechanism on my microphone.
Might be.
I mean, extraneous noises or whatever. So, change of position. This is pretty interesting. It says a change of position is a defense to a claim in unjust enrichment, which operates to reduce a defendant's liability to the extent to which his or her circumstances have changed as a consequence of an enrichment. I think the hardest part is, think about this. You receive something, and it changes your life in some way. But you never asked for it. You never asked for it.
Right.
So again, that's the biggest part of unjust enrichment, is receiving a benefit that you didn't ask for. Change of position. Look what it says here. The historical core of the law of unjust enrichment consists of the quasi-contractual actions of money had and received, money paid to the defendant's use, quantum meruit and quantum velabat. These personal common law actions generated an obligation on the part of the defendant to give restitution of a gain acquired at the expense of the plaintiff. This liability was strict and independent of any wrongdoing. Okay, let's just go back and figure out what the hell it really is all about.
Yeah.
Because it becomes so obvious when I put it into a perspective. I'm going to go to the next link down, which is the Investopedia. Okay. Once you hear their example.
Okay.
Now, when you go to unjust enrichment at Investopedia, it'll take you to quasi-contract.
Yeah, I'm there.
It says definition, example, and requirements. So it says, what is a quasi-contract? Again, when you go to one, it takes you to this because that's how they term it.
Okay.
A quasi-contract is a retroactive arrangement. Retroactive. What does that mean?
From before.
Right. So something it goes back. It presumes something in advance.
Yes. That something happened before. That there was something before.
That's something that's applicable. It says a quasi-contract is a retroactive arrangement between two parties who have no previous obligations to one another. There it is right there. Think about this. It's an arrangement that occurs between two people that didn't have one before. But it's retroactive. So you and I are sitting here now, and something comes up that says, now we have an agreement. Something that occurred previously.
Okay.
Now, this is why it's so weird. Something that happened or something that is happening now implies an agreement earlier. You see that?
Yeah.
It says between two parties who have no previous obligations to one another. It's created by a judge. It's created by a judge.
Wow.
To correct a circumstance in which one party acquires something at the expense of another. So think about that. If we're both unaware of whatever the circumstance is. Nothing ever happens.
Right.
But if somebody does know something, and they're able to bring that as a cause of action into a courtroom, you may still not know what's going on.
Right.
That's every single case in the courtroom today.
Pretty much guaranteed if you walk in a courtroom, you don't know what's going on.
You don't know what's going on because it's always bait and switch.
Yeah.
It looks like this, but when you get there, it all gets turned around and into something else that we really don't have a clue what's going on in there. I don't care how smart anybody is. In that room, at any given point, you have no idea what's going on. Because these people are there to swindle you.
Yeah.
They're there to swindle you, take something from you, but they're going to do it legally. But you have no idea what you're even doing there.
Right, but the legally is because they created the rules.
That's right. Whether it's a driver's license, which is not required, according to Chapter 12, 67th Congress, speeding tickets, DUIs, all that stuff, none of that's law. It's to get you into the room.
Right.
It's to bring you to the theater so that they can put on a show.
Yeah.
But what they really have you on is something else. And it's all based on a birth certificate. A quasi-contract.
Okay. I'm not...
Because they can't get you in there unless they cite you for something.
Yes.
They have to invite you to the theater, and they have to give you a ticket to the show.
Right. And you have...
It's a ticket to the show.
Yeah. And then they have your signature on it that says you agreed to come to the show.
And that's all it is. They're giving you a ticket to the show. You see it as a speeding ticket.
Right.
You see it as whatever, but it's a ticket to the show.
Yeah.
That's all it is. And, of course, if I want to go to a concert, I have to pay for the ticket.
Right.
So they forced the ticket upon me. So one way or another, they're going to extract something from me for the ticket that I actually agreed to because somehow I found myself in a community that has all these rules. But in reality, if I'm not a willful participant in the community, think about, again, this is all quasi-contract. There's a presumption I am part of a community. How did I get in there?
Yeah.
A piece of me was placed on deposit.
Yep.
And now I become a member of that community. Did I agree to that?
No.
No, it was an act of violence that took that piece of me away and placed it on deposit that now presumes me to be a party to that community.
Right.
Another quasi-contract. And it's going to make sense right now. Until you hear this. In fact, I'm going to do it right now. I'm going to go to the example. And then we can keep going backwards and talk about it.
Okay.
So scroll down.
I'm there.
At Investopedia to the example. And this is so amazing to me. It says, a classic quasi-contract circumstance may be created by the delivery of a pizza to the wrong address. That is, not to the person who paid for it. If the individual at the incorrect address fails to fess to the error and instead keeps the pizza, they could be seen as having accepted the food and thus be obligated or obliged to pay for it, even though they didn't order it. A court could then rule to issue a quasi-contract that requires the pizza recipient to pay back the cost of the food to the party who purchased it, or to the pizzeria if it subsequently delivered a second pie to the purchaser, the true purchaser. The restitution mandated under the quasi-contract aims for the fair resolution of the situation. Now think about this. This to me blew my mind. It says, a pizza delivered to the wrong address. The people at that address answer their door, and a guy's standing there with a pizza. He gives it to them. The pizza's already paid for.
Mm-hmm.
He just hands it to them. They close the door and they eat the pizza. They knew that pizza wasn't theirs.
Yeah.
But they accepted it.
Mm-hmm.
They accepted the benefit of the pizza. The food.
Yeah, I get that. I just am confused about who, if I put it over to the birth certificate, I can't. The pizza.
Okay, I first of all, understand that these people have a right to keep the pizza.
Okay.
Did they have a right to keep it? Was it their pizza? Did they pay for it?
No, they didn't have a right to keep it.
So, but they did.
Yeah, they did.
And so, all of a sudden, if somebody calls them up and say, "Hey, what the fuck? You owe me $26."
Yeah.
They're going to say, we didn't order it.
But they ate it.
But they ate it. So they did order it.
Uh-huh.
See, they took the benefit of the pizza.
Uh-huh.
And now they owe for it.
Right.
Even though they didn't order it.
Got it. Okay.
Now, this is hard because I'm putting us in the position of the recipient of the pizza.
Yeah, yeah.
If a pizza came to my house and I didn't order it, I'd say I didn't order this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the guy would have to drive away with the pizza.
Mm-hmm.
But I know more people would take the pizza
mm-hmm.
and then presume that they don't owe anything for it.
Yeah.
Because they didn't order it.
Mm-hmm.
And I know more people believe that than not.
That's hard for me, a hard concept for me to understand.
Hey, we get stuff delivered here all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we are.
One day, we had a grocery order.
Wow.
That went to the wrong house, and we never heard anything.
Mm.
We had to call the delivery guys, and they had to go reshop it and bring us our paid-for food.
Mm.
But somebody's sitting on a bunch of bags of groceries at their porch.
Yeah.
They never said it wasn't theirs.
Mm-hmm.
They took them.
So what would happen if... So when...
I'm about to explain it, but
okay.
Let's argue this point for a while, because I need everybody to understand by taking something that even if you didn't order it,
right.
You're now obligated to pay for it.
Yeah.
If somebody questions you.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you ate it.
Yeah.
If you took it in your house and you ate it.
Yeah.
Whether you ate it or not, if you received it and took it.
Yeah.
And threw it away.
Mm-hmm.
You owe for the pizza.
Yeah.
You took the benefit of the pizza even though you didn't order it. Now you're guilty of the, you're obliged to pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what were you going to say?
Well, I was just thinking if something was delivered to your house and it's left on the steps and you're not there, and then I'm just thinking of
you still got to call somebody.
Yeah.
And call the grocery store, call somebody because they have a contract with the delivery service.
Right.
You call that grocery store because you're going to find something in there that will evidence the store it came from.
Yeah.
You call the store and say, listen, this stuff isn't mine.
Yeah, yeah.
Now you've removed the benefit.
Yeah.
By removing the benefit, there's no obligation.
Mm-hmm.
You listen to what it says. The other part of this, it says a court could then rule to issue. The court's issuing something.
Yeah, yeah.
To issue a quasi-contract that requires the pizza recipient to pay back the cost.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, that seems...
But that's where the issue comes from. The court issues when you're there in the courtroom. When you're standing in the courtroom because you received a speeding ticket.
Yeah.
The court's issuing something.
Yes.
It's actually creating a contract between you and somebody else that you know nothing about.
Yes, I agree with
Based upon the birthday.
Yes.
Based upon the birth certificate. So they're changing. It's a bait and switch.
Yeah.
They're changing it into a contract situation, a quasi-contract based upon the birth certificate.
Yeah. Becky, if you want to say something, you got to come out here because we can't hear you.
Yeah, never mind.
Hi, Becky. Come on. Get on this call.
I'm eavesdropping.
Well, come and eavesdrop. Tell them what you wanted to say.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
She won't do it.
Anyway, so again, the court's doing this. The court is creating the connection, the joinder.
Yes.
The joinder occurs when the court issues a quasi-contract. Why is the court issuing a quasi-contract? Because you accepted something. You accepted something. I know what it is, and we're about to get into that, but you accepted something.
Uh-huh.
All they did was issue a ticket to get you into the room, into the theater.
Right.
But once you were in the theater, they had what they needed to issue a quasi-contract.
Yes.
And that was you, except when they do their discovery and they discover this birth certificate is in play. And the fact that you even acknowledge it by saying this is your birthday,
yeah.
you have become part of that community.
Yes.
And a quasi-contract is going to be issued by the court to force you, because you just received a benefit, they're going to force you to perform.
Yes.
You're going to perform.
Yeah. You're going to be a bit player in their court.
In that theater, you're going to become, you're going to have to play your role as sacrifice.
Yeah.
You're the sacrificial lamb. But it gets better. Because it looks like we're the ones in trouble. It looks like because of the birth certificate, we're in trouble, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But wait a minute.
But they are the original. They took the original.
The recipient.
They're the original.
Of the violently cut and removed biology. Somebody else took that.
Right. That's what I'm saying is.
That's where this is going to get good. When they took that biology, when they received that biology at the hospital, that was like us receiving the pizza.
Yes. That's what I was thinking. It's interesting that they gave an example of a pizza, another pie.
Another pie,
another
right.
Cake.
I mean, the pie that we're receiving is Mom's apple pie.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I think that's funny all by itself. Because isn't the apple tree part of the rose bush family? The rose, the bloodline?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
So Mom's apple pie is the uterine wall.
And it makes the whole thing of George Washington cutting down the apple tree a whole different blush to it, doesn't it?
Well, why would he do that? He cut down the apple tree because he didn't want the Roman Catholic Church involved in his business.
Right. Yeah.
That composition of matter, the placenta, the waste material is that apple tree.
Oh, well, actually, Becky just corrected me. Would you come out here? Cherry tree. It was a cherry tree, but that's still of the rose family.
It is. I believe it is.
Yeah, well, I'm pretty sure it is. All of those fruit trees come from that general.
That line.
Yeah, that general genre of peach. All of them, the way they're formed and everything. I believe.
I'm going to check real quick.
My vague memory.
Let's see. Yeah, Rose family.
Yeah, that's what I want. I can't even think.
Yeah, I think that it probably is. I'm not going to take the time, but there's 4,000 species.
Yeah.
Within the rose.
We can look at the actual plant, and they're very similar.
Yeah. There's crabapple, wild cherry, dog rose. Anyway, the point is, remember that the placenta is a feto-maternal organ.
Yes.
When I only claim my biology, I'm accepting nothing.
Yes, I agree.
When I say all present and accounted for from fertilization to last breath, and I'm only referring to my own biology, I have not received a benefit.
No.
And I'm making it very clear that I'm choosing not to receive a benefit.
Yes.
If I allow the placenta to remain a singular tertium quid concept that has a title, Curtis Richard Kallenbach, then that title, that individual title, becomes a benefit.
Yes. And any time you try any way in any of these other remedies to play in that world, you've joined the community.
And you now have received a benefit.
You received a benefit, and you're subject to all of the games, the rules of the game, whether you know what they are or not.
And that's where this is interesting, is because if the hospital takes that matter, if the medical industry takes that material and gives it a title, they took my biology. Now this is going to get it's going to get very subtle. And they put a name to it, a title, Curtis Richard Kallenbach. And then my lifetime, I go out and I work and I earn through that name. They have received the benefit of my energy. So those that are holding that title in trust, they are subject to unjust enrichment.
Yes.
That's what I was trying to get at the whole time.
Yeah, that's what I first went to, was they're the ones getting unjust but if they flip it around, if they can flip it around to where we become the recipient and we are being unjustly enriched by their character. Right.
Then we are the ones subject to being conferred a benefit upon, and we then have to pay them. But if we know that the tertium quid placenta has two sides to that story, and mine alone, I'm still using mine, and I've never given it up. But if I know that they're using my biology to create that character, then they have unjustly been enriched by my efforts, my services.
Absolutely.
And that's where people need to understand that it's the birth certificate itself is an either-or situation. It can go either way.
Yeah.
But if you know that somebody else is being unjustly enriched by your biology, by your existence or connection to that placenta, which is the birth certificated cake.
Yeah.
The birthday cake itself is that individual.
Yes. Yes.
That lost sheep, lost lamb, lost coin, according to the Bible. That's why this is so interesting. Is when when I go back and I read Unjust Enrichment at Cornell, knowing that they are being enriched by my biology.
Yes.
When I now change gears completely and say, listen, anybody using or presuming a connection or joinder to my biology is being unjustly enriched, because this is not voluntary.
Which is true.
Which is true.
It's totally true. They're enriched all the time.
Right. And not only that, but they're able to write checks.
Yeah.
And try to make it look like I am guaranteeing those checks with my energy.
Yes.
They're using me as the guarantor, the underwriter for their debts.
Yes.
So they're being enriched because they get to walk away from all of their debt by the presumption that I received a benefit. Now look at, don't they, even in the hospitals, they have a room called receiving.
Yes.
They're the ones receiving.
Yes.
Now, here's what's weird is, real recently, didn't the Pope start calling in all his properties?
Uh-huh.
Isn't that human creature placenta, doesn't he presume that to be his property?
Yes.
But it isn't.
No.
I think he's trying to bring all his stuff, all his presumed property back into the fold before he can't.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know for a fact that birth certificated character, that half that biology is mine.
Mm-hmm.
And so if he's trying to recall or bring all of his properties back into Vatican City by October 1st or whatever that date was, he's trying to recall all the birth certificated persons in essence.
Yeah, all the ignorant that don't know the truth of the matter yet. Mm-hmm.
Right. But if he does that, then everybody's still subject to Rome.
Yes.
Which is also known as the public.
Yes.
Rome and the public are the same words.
Uh-huh. And then their switch and bait can continue theoretically.
Right. Now you have to argue with Rome over your benefit, the benefits you're receiving, the public benefits in some way you're receiving.
And when Roosevelt made this, consecrated this nation, then that put us back under Rome in the community, right?
The consecrated nation is the holy ground itself. The holy ground is the material that was cut off of you.
Right.
Yes. And placed in the so-called churchyard. The churchyard is a cemetery.
Right.
So really the consecrated nation is a giant national cemetery.
Right.
Because that's where all the decedent estates are located. Mm-hmm. They're located in a cemetery.
Yeah.
And then they get to administrate through their agency, which are the juridical persons, the birth certificated persons, which we don't know how to use. Mm-hmm. We don't know how to use them because they are what? They're attorneys.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That's all they are. They're attorneys.
And what does a turn do? It switch and bait. It changes. So
right.
So their word that word itself shows what they do. Wow.
And maybe the birth certificate person is an attorney in fact. In other words, it gives you agency over that property, but it doesn't bring you back to life. Mm-hmm. All it does is keep that biology 6 feet under, keep that estate, that birth certificated decedent estate in play. And the only way you can act upon your own property is through that agency, through that attorney in fact, which is a birth certificated person.
I'm sorry.
The juridical person.
Yes. We watched Weekend with Bernie.
Oh, see, I haven't watched it yet. Again.
I watched both. We both watched the first and second one both, but I just had the picture of when they woke him back up from the dead and he's walking down the street. That's kind of what they keep doing to us.
Was it worth watching again?
Oh my! I had never watched it before.
Oh.
That's my whole part of my life that I never was around movies or television. So all of this is new to me. So yeah, Becky and I thought we about fell out of our chairs watching it. But I'm just having a flash of that exact scene. Exactly what they do is where these decedent estates we walk into the church called the court, and we give life to the decedent, and it gets up, and the way he walks is like his head's back and his chest's out, and he's stumbling along. Otherwise, he's carried by the other two people everywhere. But when the voodoo person gets him, it's he brings life. It's like momentarily, and then it's when the music's playing, he comes to life, and when the music stops, he falls back down dead again.
That's kind of what we do.
Exactly. That's why it came into my head, was like, oh my God, it's just like that scene.
What's really weird is, now, correct me if I'm wrong, but they needed him to appear alive so they could benefit, right?
Oh yeah, they took him to the bank to try to get his they wanted to get into the safety deposit box. Yeah, they needed him. They needed him alive because through both for different reasons. They kept pretending he was alive, and the whole parties and everything, nobody else didn't notice that he was dead.
See, that's why that movie's so amazing. It's because these guys need Bernie alive to access Bernie's estate.
Yes.
But he's really not alive.
Right.
So they give the appearance of life, the spirit of life, but he's not alive. That's why they created the birth certificated estate, the decedent estate, because they can raid our estates just by giving us life in those courtrooms for the short period of time and then letting us die again.
Right, and that's
on paper.
And that's in the second movie, the voodoo lady brings him to life. And you go into the court and there's a game that's played. It's sort of like musical chairs. Only they took your chair away. Left you stand.
Right, and that's why they say all rise. Exactly. Because they're giving life back. They're bringing spirit back, and then they can steal from that account while you're there. When you appear, they can get you to agree that it's okay for them to go into that account and steal from you.
Yep.
With your own authorization.
Yeah, and that's that scene where the music brings him back to life, and then as soon as the music stops, he's dead again. So they bring you back to life, they extort you, and then the minute you walk out the door under that name, you're dead again. The music stopped. That part of that thing is just perfect for what you're talking about.
Yeah, there are so many movies out there, but that's one. Again, it's been years since I've seen it, but again, they needed him to appear alive in order for them to extract or get into his accounts. Because if he was dead, they couldn't do it.
Right.
And that's what they do with us in the courtroom. In order for them to access the Bar Association, to access our money, the real money that's held in trust, in order for them to access that trust, we have to be alive. For that short period of time, that we have to appear alive.
Appear alive. That's important.
Now, again, getting back to the idea of the unjust enrichment, would you say that anybody accessing or gaining a benefit that was not conferred upon them voluntarily? You see what's happening here?
That was not conferred upon them voluntarily.
Well, if I am not a true volunteer.
Yeah, you're not volunteering. Yeah. Then that's
so I'm sitting at the intersection and somebody comes up and washes my window when I don't want them to. I don't owe them anything. When somebody confers a benefit on me that I don't want, that here's a birth certificated person, happy birthday, I don't want that shit.
Right.
And so the fact that I don't want that benefit means that I don't owe you anything.
Yeah.
And that's what they're doing to us in every instance. They're making it look like we're willful participants in a community, but that community is a dead community. It's the dead pool.
Yeah.
It's only decedents that are in that community. It's a churchyard. It's a cemetery.
Yeah.
By the way, if you drive into a cemetery today, it has its own speed limits.
Yes.
There's a fence around that thing, so you know that you're inside of this thing, this community.
Yeah.
It's a community. By the way, that community could be called paradise. It could be called heaven, because eternal life is death.
Yeah.
So when you choose eternal life willfully, or if that's your desire, is to have eternal life conferred upon you, there it is. There's your benefit. The benefit of eternal life.
Yeah.
It's death.
Yeah. Yippee.
No, but that's the benefit.
I know. Yeah.
So the decedent estate, when you choose eternal life, they give you eternal life through a decedent estate. The dead material, the dead body, Bernie.
Yeah.
And now you have the benefit that you choose because you want eternal life, right? Right. You're hesitant to say it out loud.
No,
I don't. Listen, eternal life is death. It's that simple.
Yeah,
eternal life is death.
Yeah, yeah.
Mortal life is living.
Yeah,
it's finite.
Yeah, well, you were asking me if I wanted that. And I'm like, yeah, right.
I know, you don't. You don't want eternal life. But they got people to believe eternal life was heaven. They got people to believe eternal life was what they would choose over this reality.
Yeah.
So people willfully choose eternal life, but they don't know that eternal life means dead on paper.
Right.
You're dead on paper.
Well, and they don't know that dead on paper. Also, they don't understand that they're actually in that community of dead on paper.
Right, and subject to the rules of dead on paper.
Right.
And that's why, again, unjust enrichment. Who is being enriched by you being dead?
They are. Whoever.
They are.
Yeah.
They are. But they swindled you. They got you to agree, whether it's through religion that eternal life's a good thing, or happy birthday.
Yeah.
They got you to agree on that position, so it looks like you're accepting the benefit.
Yeah.
And once you accept the benefit, now you got a situation. But remember, I'm going to go back to Investopedia. Quasi-contract, it says a court could then rule to issue a quasi-contract that requires the pizza recipient, the birth certificate recipient,
Right.
to pay back
Yep. And that's
the cost. And that's everything.
Yep.
If you earned all your money, if you got your house, your cars, if everything you have is through the benefit of that birth certificated pizza, couldn't the court order you to pay it all back?
Yeah.
That's kind of what's happening.
That's what they're doing. That's what they're moving towards.
That's since 1933, with the creation of the birth certificates, this place is collapsing. All the money that you've ever earned, everything anybody's ever earned through the birth certificated person, looks like a benefit conferred upon them.
Yeah.
In reality, it was an act of violence that separated that biology, that gave rise to that legal fiction.
Mm-hmm.
Which is the crime up front. The original crime is where I always go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There could be no birth certificated person without the cut.
Right.
Without the substance, without the biology, there is no paper character.
Right. It's not.
They can't just make it up and say, oh, by the way, this is yours.
Yeah, that's a misnomer in every person that I talk to that knows even some of this. It's like, well, it's made up out of thin air. And it's like, no, it's not.
No, it's not.
So I looked up heaven in etymology.
Yeah.
And it says there's, they've got a whole bunch of different derivations, but the second paragraph says perhaps it literally means a covering, from chem, to cover, which has also been proposed as the source of chemise. And chemise is a shirt, a loose covering. Hold on, I got to go back to it.
Or a vestment.
Oh, that's where I went. Yeah, loose, but it's usually a woman. It says a shirt, undershirt, under a shift directly from Latin, camicia, shirt, tunic. They thought originally it was German, a soldier's word, but then the French took it over in the 12th century to mean women's undergarment, a dress hanging straight from the shoulders, a loose-fitting gown worn by women.
Like the handmaidens.
Yeah.
In the TV show Handmaid's Tale.
Well, and is not our extra embryonic our covering? Our shirt.
Right, but isn't there a shirt over that covering?
Yes, that too, yes.
That's the maternal afterbirth becomes the chemise or the shirt.
Yeah.
Or the cover. I am naked until I'm covered by my mother's biology in the placenta.
Yes.
So they make it look like the coverage, the insurance coverage, or heaven, is your mom's placental material covering you.
Yeah.
When you need something.
Yeah.
And that's the Church of Rome.
But they're
the ones, but they get us then to underwrite.
Yeah, we're paying for it all the time, and then they say, "Here, we're giving you something."
Right. And that's what I'm getting. So this, again, did they deliver? Remember the definition of delivery.
Mm-hmm.
The fetus and its membranes.
Mm-hmm.
That's a delivery.
Yeah.
If they would have delivered all of you, would there be anything missing to deliver somewhere else? See, that's the whole point. That's my entire argument.
The pizza.
Is that if go ahead.
The pizza did not get delivered to the right address, the correct address. It didn't get delivered whole to.
If all of me was delivered as one supreme being,
yes,
in one moment outside the womb,
yes,
then there would be no piece of me left over.
Nope.
To be delivered anywhere else.
It would be a contiguous moment.
It would be contiguous. My biology is contiguous in the womb.
Yes. And it would have continued contiguous out of the womb, evolving, continuing its evolutionary to today.
Had they not cut me apart.
Yes, and created two things. Yes.
And that's when, and again, by cutting a piece of me off, with what most people forget, they go, oh, that piece of you. I said, yeah, but it's worse than that. Because the piece they cut off, the umbilical cord leads to the extra embryonic material, which is also me, but that extra embryonic material has a part of mom attached to it. And that's the cover. Or that's the membranes that covered us is us. But the membranes that covered that membrane is mom.
And that's what I just read was we could say it's the shemist, which is heaven, which goes to have faith and all of that about, oh, wow.
And that's the church, they call that the church or whatever, the mother.
Yeah.
And that's the part that, again, quasi-contract. Did we receive something that we didn't agree to? Or did we not receive something we should have?
I would say yes, both.
Yes to both. Hang on a second. I'll be right back.
Okay. I think my shirt must be... Oh.
I was going to sneeze.
Uh-oh.
Anyway, so all right, let's clarify. Let's bring this back because there's two potential situations here. Either or. If I receive a pizza, a guy comes to my front door, hands me a pizza. I accept it, bring it into the house, and I eat it. The courts could issue a quasi-contract that says I owe either the money to the one that ordered the pizza or the pizzeria that made the pizza that delivered another pizza to the ones that paid for it. There are two potential claimants.
Yeah.
If I take that pizza. One, the people that paid for it down the block, they might demand that I pay them for the pizza, or the guy that made the pizza.
So,
you got that?
So that would be mom and
baby. Who made the pizza? If you're thinking in terms of placenta, who owns the pizza? Who made the pizza? Who made the placenta?
Well, an act of God made the pizza.
Well, but I mean, the placenta has two owners. Who are they?
The baby and the fetus.
The
mother, the maternal and the fetal.
Right. So you got baby and mom own.
Yeah.
The placenta together.
Yes.
If it's viewed as one thing.
Yes.
So if it exists, if that tertium quid exists, then both baby and mom are the pizzeria. If the birth certificate gets delivered to somebody, or the pizza or the placenta gets delivered to somebody, there are only two people that have a legitimate claim.
Mm-hmm.
But they only have a legitimate claim upon their portion.
Yes.
I can't claim the placenta because the placenta is a feto-maternal organ, but neither can my mom.
It's kind of like you own the sauce and the sausage and the tomato sauce, and your mom owns the bread.
But that's why I think there's an equity.
Okay.
You see, the placenta, because there's two owners, and they share the placenta. If you view the placenta as one thing, there would be two shareholders.
Right.
That would be baby and mom.
Mm-hmm.
Now you have an equity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But if I remove my biology, if I'm still using my biology, then all of my life, all of my biology belongs to me.
Yeah.
And there is no placenta to be argued over. And that's the whole point.
Yeah. And
is they created a situation that is an impossibility.
Yeah. That is right.
Okay, so do you have your Black's Law around?
Yep, I do.
I'm going to, let's bust out, look up impossibility for me.
Okay.
I will too, but I got to go back in the house.
Okay.
Impossibility. If the placenta does not exist as a singular organ,
Mm-hmm.
if I'm still using my biology, is it available for a third party, a third person?
No.
No, so the third party, third person placenta, the tertium quid, it cannot exist if I do.
No. It's either
It's
or.
an impossibility.
Yeah, it's either or. You're right.
It's either or. Either I'm living or the placenta exists as a third person. The placenta character can't exist if I do.
Mm-mm.
Because that would be a total fraud.
Mm-hmm.
Impossible.
You've really put him in an impossible situation, haven't you?
I think so. I think the reason this place is such a mess and they're trying to screw it up really bad is because there's no wiggle room.
Mm-mm.
Impossible.
It's on page 680.
All right, so 680. Okay, it says that which. This is so cool. When you understand an impossibility, you realize that they're in it. When you pull your biology into one place at one moment in time and become one, it's impossible for them to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
Look what it says here. Go ahead.
That which in the constitution and course of nature or the law no man can do or perform.
Can I perform death?
No.
No, not without self-destruction, not without suicide, not without loss. Remember what it says here. It says, I'm going to the contract again. I'm going to unjust enrichment. It says to recover on a claim of unjust enrichment, the plaintiff must show that the defendant was unjustly enriched at the plaintiff's expense.
Mm-hmm.
At my expense.
Yes.
If it costs me my life, I would say that's pretty expensive.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
So it says that which in the Constitution and course of nature or the law no man can do or perform. Mm-hmm. The birth certificated character is an impossibility.
Yes. And
I can't perform it.
No, and now because their tertium quid has disappeared with our knowledge, they can't do anything.
They don't have any sureties to back up their banking system.
Yeah.
And now the banks are all fraud.
Yep.
They're all founded on fraud. They're founded upon an impossibility.
Yep.
The tertium quid placenta is an impossibility if there's living people.
Yep, absolutely.
Decedent estates cannot exist side by side by the living man or woman.
No.
Scott versus McNeil. Impossibility. Let me see if there's something.
Well, I have. This is something we must have done at some other time, but on top of the right-hand side, I have it circled. An act is physically impossible when it is contrary to the course of nature, which is what you just said.
You can't be both living and dead.
Right, exactly.
And that's why Curtis Richard Kallenbach, the individual legal name, is an impossibility. I can't be both in the placenta, in mother, and here now talking to you.
No.
And the fact that I'm still using that biology means that what they have on deposit is a fraud.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And if they use that fraud to back up their banking system, it's criminal.
Yep.
And that's where they're at.
Yep. Because somebody figured it out.
So they need to kill everybody, or they need to make the world so horrible that we forget about that crime.
Yes.
That's what they're doing right now. They're getting us to argue over whether I want to be a man or a woman, or I am a man or a woman, or I'm non-binary. They're talking about crashing the entire financial system. They got fake COVID. They got vaccines that are murdering people. They got so much shit going on because their entire financial system is fraud.
Yeah, they're doing exactly what you said. They're throwing the board over.
They're kicking the board.
Yeah. So go down to the bottom of that page where it says impossible contract.
Oh, yeah, okay. What does it say?
One which the law will not hold binding upon the parties because of natural or legal impossibilities of the performance of one party of that which is the consideration for the promise of the other party.
And what's the consideration in their system?
The consideration is I have to be dead.
In other words, the placenta, the biological deposit that has your biology, has to be dead in order to give rise to the decedent estate, which is the deposit.
Yeah, and then read the next one. Impossibilum nulla obligito est. There is no obligation to do impossible things.
And there it is. So, unjust enrichment is them getting us to receive the benefit.
Yes.
They confer a benefit upon us through the third-party tertium quid birth certificated person.
Yes.
That's a benefit. Now, but what does it cost me?
Your life?
My life. I have to sacrifice my life, my living present. I have to sacrifice my presence in order for that character, that decedent estate, to exist.
Yes.
And that's the only way their banking system works, because they use a middleman between the living and the dead, and that middleman is conversion.
Yes.
They're converting blood or energy or spirit into labor.
Yes.
They're ruling the world. They have captured all labor.
Yes.
Through their character.
Yes.
And that's the whole point here, is that this system is an impossibility for living men and women.
Yes.
It's impossible for the living. Anybody out there
it is
that is promoting a system of participation is promoting death.
Yes.
They're promoting death. And anybody that says, hey, you can manipulate this, you can work within it, no, you can't. It's all or nothing. Truth is all or nothing. Either you're dead or you're living. You can't have both. They got us to agree to death, and they call it eternal life.
Yeah.
How dumb are we? How dumb are we?
Yep, pretty ignorant.
Well, and ignorance is really what it is. It's ignorant. We're ignoring what's right in front of us.
Yeah.
But there are so many people out there that are teaching how to
How to be afraid of that?
What's that?
How to be afraid of that?
Yeah. Well, yeah. But I mean, that's the sad part.
Yeah, it is.
Is that everybody that's making money in that system has to protect the world of the dead.
Yes.
And so even in the Bible, they keep talking about the return of the living Christ. Now, are we actually dead? No. But do they consider sleeping
dead? Yes.
Right. So we're unconscious to reality, and we choose to stay unconscious by accepting the benefit of the eternal life. The benefit of eternal life. Ouch.
That's a pretty sucky benefit.
Not for those that are confused. Let's do a couple more things here. I want to go. Impossibility is so powerful. You there?
Yeah.
Let me see if I can get. Hang on a second. My headset keeps falling off. I gotta go get a hat.
Okay.
This is the only way this headset works. Is if I'm wearing a hat. All right. Impossibility. An act is physically impossible when it is contrary to the course of nature. Such an impossibility may be either absolute, impossible in any case, like to stop the rotation of the earth, or relative, sometimes called impossibility in fact.
Well, essentially, that's what they're doing, is they're stopping the rotation of your life. If you have to choose death, the evolution of your own life is stopped. So it really is impossible because you're still breathing. You're still here.
And you know what's funny is that it says to stop the rotation of the earth. I mean, if we got really down into the definition of earth, which would be soil, or I mean, ultimately it'd probably come down to biology.
Yeah.
Rotation would probably end up meaning something else, but rotation, when you first read it, you go, yeah, like they can stop the rotation of the earth. Well, when you start to know and learn words, you realize that that's not exactly what they're talking about. But it does say absolute, stop the rotation of the earth, or relative, sometimes called impossibility in fact.
So the whole word quasi that we're talking about from Investopedia, quasi-contract, is sort of that in the category of impossibility in fact, right?
Yeah. I mean, if you really think about getting a pizza delivered to your house and you taking it over the threshold into your house, I mean, they do say you have to invite the devil in. But isn't that kind of what you just did?
Yeah.
Or by receiving a birth certificate in the mail, you know, pulling it out of a federal mailbox, taking it into your house, you've just received that child, or you've adopted that birth certificated child. I mean, that's a form of receiving. Or acceptance, offer acceptance. But the reality is, the birth certificate is not relevant to life. And it's not necessary. In fact, the birth certificated child is a decedent estate.
Yeah.
So it is contrary to life.
Absolutely.
So by them even delivering it to your house, that's a form of blackmail.
Yeah, and black magic, voodoo.
And black magic, it's voodoo, it's death. It ultimately gives the appearance of death. If you accept that decedent estate, then I cannot be living if I accept that.
Right.
To read on, it says, i.e. arising from the circumstances of the case, e.g. for A to make a payment to B, he being a deceased person. They're even using the exact same example. So again, look what it says here. Such an impossibility may be either absolute, impossible in any case, or relative, arising from the circumstances of the case. Example is, for A to make a payment to B, he being a deceased person. So they're even using the decedent estate as an example.
So couldn't they say, oh, well, they're dead, so how can I make a payment to them? How can I give any restitution because they've already agreed to be dead?
Well, again, if you're managing the estate and you require a management fee or administrative fee for managing that decedent estate, I'm sure that that's already written into the agreement of the birth certificated person. I'm fairly certain it's somewhere in that verbiage. And again, I got to be clear, I don't care about any of this.
No, I'm not saying that.
No, I'm saying I don't care about the birth certificated person. I don't.
Yeah.
I don't care what anybody else believes, but I don't care about what they believe about the birth certificated person, about the birth certificate itself. I don't give a shit about other people's beliefs about anything at this point.
Yeah, no, I get that.
Okay.
No, I was just saying from a legal standpoint, you go into that court, and if you go in and say, well, pretty much anything, but they could on their side, say, we can't, even if you bring the truth in, it's like they can't give anything back because from their point of view, you're dead in their world.
I think that the strongest position at this point, if you get brought into that room, I would just bring up the term unjust enrichment. I would just say, listen, I believe that the participants in this particular case are being unjustly enriched by me, by my biology, by my name, by the implication, by the joining. I think whoever is going to make money on this case is unjustly being enriched by me.
And there is no obligation to do impossible things. True.
I'm not obligated to do an impossible thing. I cannot perform both me. I can't perform as a dead body. I can't perform as a dead man. I can't perform as me being dead. It's an impossibility. I think that's a huge word all by itself.
Yeah.
It does say that too. It says down here, impossibilium nulla obligato est. There is no obligation to do impossible things. That decedent estate is an impossibility for me to perform.
Yes.
Because I'm living.
Wow.
You can't be both dead and living.
Wow.
Going on, it says about the deceased person, to the latter class belongs to what is sometimes called practical impossibility, which exists when the act can be done, but only at an excessive and unreasonable cost. I have to be dead.
That's kind of excessive.
I think so.
And
I think
unreasonable.
Self-destruction, suicide, self-sacrifice.
Not only does it have to be, it has to be you doing it to yourself, too. Not only do you have to be dead, but you have to choose to be dead. In their
Yes. And again, you come up and you wash my window with an expectation of getting something. You confer the clean window benefit upon my car and me, And now you're expecting something in return, but I didn't agree to that.
Right.
They send you a birth certificated person in the mail that you never asked for.
Mm-hmm.
But since we all celebrate birthdays because we were told to, or we believe that that's our birthday,
mm-hmm.
ignorance of the law is no excuse.
Right.
That's not my birth. I came out of my mother's womb on a day, but not even a Gregorian calendar day, because even that's a fictitious
mm-hmm.
calendar.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another thing people don't understand, is that the Gregorian calendar, the calendar upon which the birth is conferred, can the Gregorian calendar be looked at as a benefit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, here's the other thing. On a birthday celebration, people bring gifts, but in our culture, there's the assumption that you're going to return that favor on their birthday. So it really isn't a gift given with no obligation either, even in the game of birthdays out there in the world.
Even that's a sort of tit for tat.
Yeah, it's a tit for tat. Yeah.
Where you celebrate mine, I celebrate yours.
Yeah, and look at how ridiculous it's gotten now with people like celebrating, having 50 people come to their 1-year-old's birthday party, It's like, and then you're obligated to do that for your child too. It's gotten so insane.
Well, again, it's all about the birthday. Mm-hmm. And of course, the birthday, I believe, I know this sounds funny, but the birthday party, let me say it in a slower fashion. The birthday party is communist.
Absolutely.
So all of the birth certificated persons are part of a communal society or communistic world. So the birthday person and birthday party, the party of the birthday person, is the Communist Party.
Yes. Wow.
Which I also believe is why the birth certificated person is considered an enemy of the state, because it's communist.
Wow.
It's a communistic claim.
Wow.
So you're a communist when you celebrate the birthday.
Wow.
You're on 680 for impossibility. Go to the left column where it says implied promise. It's the third word down.
Okay.
Read it.
Fiction which the law creates to render one liable on contract theory so as to avoid fraud or unjust enrichment. F&A.
Look at that.
Wow.
And it says, see equitable estoppel.
Mm-hmm.
Because the system is built on the birth certificated character now, they need to actually have these kinds of things in place, like an implied promise.
Mm-hmm.
It says to avoid fraud or unjust enrichment.
Yeah.
An implied promise. So they're implying that you promise something.
Well, yeah, and that's what I'm saying, is it's even social. In birthday, the birthday party is implied tit for tat. It's not a gift. Everything is implied tit for tat, so then it's the one, it creates the liability to keep us all focused, so we can't say, hey, what you're doing is fraud, buddy.
It is fraud.
Yeah.
Goes on to say, an act is legally or juridically impossible when a rule of law makes it impossible to do it. All right. let me extract something here. It says an act is legally or juridically impossible when a rule of law makes it impossible to do it. When I say rule of law, what am I referring to?
The laws of nature and nature's God.
I'm implying the cut material.
Oh, okay.
Because that's the rule.
Oh,
that's the measure that they're using.
Right.
That's the rule of law.
Got it.
So when I'm whole, WHOLE, and I am intact, uncut, unbroken,
there's no.
I have the rule of law on my side.
Okay.
Now look what happens when I know my godly origins fertilization. I have the rule of law on my side, don't I?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the measure that they're using as the rule.
Okay.
The word measure and rule are the same.
Yeah.
So they're using that measure as the rule of law. And look what the sentence says now. An act is legally or juridically impossible when a rule of law makes it impossible to do it. So if I am whole, then all of their legal maneuvering or juridical nonsense is impossible.
Yes.
Because I'm living.
Yes.
They require that measure on their side as a decedent estate.
Yeah.
But when I'm still using that biology, I have the rule of law.
Yes.
On my side.
Wow.
See the difference?
Absolutely.
And again, what they're doing is they're cutting me apart. They're cutting you apart. They then establish a title to that cut material, and then they give you that title through the birth certificated person, and they're acting like it's a benefit.
Right.
But in fact, it's the rest of me.
Yep. So
but it's attached to mom.
You know what the etymological definition of party is from the 13th century?
What?
A part, a division, a section, a portion.
There it is. The birthday party. And, of course, the birth certificate is the birthday card.
And it says, a sense now obsolete also, physical piece, fragment.
Really? The party? Uh-huh. There it is. And of course, it could be, the party itself could be the cake.
Yeah.
Because that's the placenta, that's the piece missing.
Yeah.
A birthday party.
That's what, it says literally that which is divided.
That which is divided.
So
which is the placenta, by the way. Remember that the placenta is a fetal-maternal organ, so that organ is ultimately divided between owners, which is mom and baby.
So they could say a birthday celebration, but they say a birthday party. They're telling you right there.
Oh, my God.
Okay.
Another one is, it says an act is legally or juridically impossible when a rule of law makes it impossible to do it. E.g., for A to make a valid will before his majority. This class of acts must not be confounded with those which are possible, although forbidden by law, as to commit a theft. Which are possible, although forbidden by law, as to commit a theft. So it says this class of acts must not be confounded with those which are possible. Again,
they're giving themselves wiggle room there, aren't they?
Well, they are. But that's okay. Again, from fertilization to last breath, all present and accounted for, it shuts down everything.
Mm-hmm.
All present and accounted for from fertilization to last breath means that from the moment of fertilization, which is creation, to this moment as you and I speak, that's an unbroken biological evolutionary continuity. Mm-hmm. It has to be unbroken.
Yeah.
It has to be, because I'm still breathing. If I die at any point in between fertilization and this moment, I'm not talking to you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm dead.
Yeah, absolutely.
You would have to speak to somebody representing my estate.
Yeah.
That would be an attorney or somebody else. But again, a representative of my estate, an agent for my estate, a trustee for my estate. But you would never be talking to me because I'd be dead.
Right.
All right. That's the point.
Mm-hmm.
They cut that piece off. They let it die. They let it die intestate without a will.
Mm-hmm.
And then they administrate that estate.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't have anything to administrate if that cut rule of law is with me to this day.
Yeah.
As the living, breathing singularity that I am.
Yeah.
It says an act is logically impossible when it is contrary to the nature of the transaction, as where A gives property to B expressly for his own benefit on condition that he transfers it to C. See that again. When A gives property to B expressly for his own benefit.
A's benefit.
A's benefit.
So
on condition that he transfers it to C.
So what's in it for B?
Maybe an administrative fee.
Yeah.
The impossibility of performance of contract. This is another. It says, as absolving party from liability for non-performance means not only strict impossibility, but impracticability because of extreme and unreasonable difficulty, expense, injury, or loss involved. In other words, I can't perform this contract because I have to be dead to do it.
Right.
Let me say that again. I can't perform this contract or this implied contract because in order for me to perform it, I have to be dead.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that's extremely unreasonable.
Mm-hmm.
The loss is my life.
Mm-hmm. And it's very injurious.
Well, death is injurious. Yeah. Now, again, what do they do, though? They get people, religious people, to agree that they want eternal life. Mm-hmm. That's the promise on the other end. They're saying, listen, if you believe, if you have faith, then you can have eternal life.
Yeah. But
eternal life is death.
Mm-hmm. So
they're giving you what you're asking for through the birth certificate.
Mm-hmm.
If you have faith and you choose eternal life, there you go. There's your birth certificated decedent estate. You got exactly as you wished for.
Yeah, but I still, and going back to your granddaughter, they were indoctrinated into those choices, just like she, in order to get that class so she can get her goal, is having to give the answers that we get directed towards this. And it takes effort to choose differently, is all I'm saying.
It's a lot of effort.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, a lot of effort. You and I have spent years on this shit.
Yep. Hey.
Years.
If I could have run away from it, I would, but it wouldn't go away.
It won't go away because everybody believes this crap.
Yeah, I know. But
everybody wants to celebrate a birthday. Everybody wants eternal life that has faith or has a religious slant. I mean, it's all false. It's all a lie.
Yep.
But we don't want reality, apparently.
Mm-mm. Well, and I even tried to not have reality, but reality kept knocking me on the head. So.
Yeah, it's called threat.
Yeah.
Let's keep it. It says total inability. I'm back to impossibility of performance of contract.
Yeah.
Total inability of party to perform for either subjective or objective reasons and under certain circumstances, though not all such impossibility may be a defense.
Well,
I'm telling you right now,
it is a defense.
If the only way for this contract to exist is for me to be dead,
mm-hmm.
the cost is too high.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Or presumed dead.
Yeah.
The cost is too high.
Mm-hmm.
There is no benefit great enough if it kills me.
Mm-mm.
Let me say that again. There is no benefit great enough if it kills me.
That's right.
It says it is now recognized that a thing is impossible. When I say a thing, what am I referring to?
The placenta.
Pretty much the placenta. Mm-hmm. It is now recognized that a thing is impossible in legal contemplation when it is not practicable. Not practicable. You can't be both dead and alive.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it says, and a thing is impracticable when it can only be done at an excessive and unreasonable cost. That's life.
Yeah.
I have to sacrifice my life in order for this contract to be fulfilled.
Mm-hmm.
by the way, and it seems like I'm getting off topic here, but I'm not. In the Bible, Jesus always refers to himself as I am. And of course, I am is to be.
Yes.
And to be is to be present. So I am and presence, one's presence in the present moment is what Jesus is calling himself.
Yes.
Presence.
Yes.
He's actually representing the present. So in order for, if Jesus is sacrificed, what's being sacrificed?
The placenta.
The present.
Oh, yes, the present is totally being sacrificed. You can't be present if you're dead.
Right, so they get you to agree to the Bible that it's okay to sacrifice the present. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
And then when the present is sacrificed, all that they get to work within the realm of the past, which is the decedent, the world of the dead, the past.
Yeah, which is history, which is fiction, which is on paper.
So again, they get you. They got millions, maybe even billions of people to agree that the sacrifice of Jesus, or the sacrifice of the present, in order to get eternal life, is an acceptable exchange.
Yeah.
But they have to, once they got people to agree that it's okay to sacrifice Jesus, they also got people to agree it's okay to sacrifice the present.
Yeah.
And that means sacrifice their own presence.
Yeah.
By sacrificing your own presence, it gives rise to the decedent estate that's already on deposit.
Yeah.
So all they have to do is get you to agree to Jesus, or the sacrifice of Jesus, which is the sacrifice of I am, which is the sacrifice of your own presence.
Yeah. Wow.
Now the decedent estate is in play, and they can do all of their magic.
Yep. You've gone through the phantom toll booth.
Now you're dealing with the phantom limb, the cut material,
Yeah.
the amputated organ. Goes on to say, where am I here? Next one down says, it is now recognized that it's, okay, I already read that. When the issue is raised, the court is asked to construct a condition of performance based on changed circumstances.
Wow.
We already read about that.
Yep.
A process which involves at least 3 reasonably definable steps. First, a contingency, something unexpected, must have occurred, like self-sacrifice. Second, the risk of the unexpected occurrence must not have been
Allotted?
Allocated.
Allocated, yeah.
Either by agreement or by custom. Okay.
Risk.
Is the cutting of the umbilical cord customary?
Yes.
Yes. It's considered a custom.
Okay. Either by agreement or by custom. Okay.
And it says, second, the risk of the unexpected occurrence must not have been allocated, either by agreement or custom. And finally, occurrence of the contingency must have rendered performance commercially impracticable. Commercially. But look what it says here. When the issue is raised, the court is asked to construct a condition of performance.
Yeah. And that's what it said in the...
Yes, that's the quasi-contract.
Right, the quasi-contract where the judge
is
created
actually
by a judge to correct a circumstance.
And what's really interesting about that is what they call corrective measures. Corrective measures.
And measures is the same as rule.
which is the rule of law, which is the cut.
Yeah.
So again, think of baby comes out of the womb. Picture this: baby's coming out of the womb. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Baby's here now, in the present moment. You can see baby.
Mm-hmm.
There's an umbilical cord that is attached to baby's, what we call the belly button, and the umbilical cord runs back through the vagina back into the womb.
Mm-hmm.
So the baby's in the present. There's an umbilical cord that actually crosses the threshold between the worlds of the unborn and the born.
Mm-hmm.
Part of the umbilical's in the born, part of the umbilical's in the unborn.
Yes.
The other side of the umbilical cord, on the other end of the cord, is the extra embryonic material, which is the rest of baby.
Mm-hmm.
It's the rest of baby.
Yeah.
And it's still, let's just pretend it's attached to the wall of the uterus still.
Okay.
They clamp and cut the cord. They clamp and cut the umbilical cord.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care how long they wait.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not even going to go there with people.
Right. No.
They clamp and cut the cord. Now they've divided the baby. They've separated the baby from the rest of baby.
Yes.
Now, the funny thing is that outside the womb, they call the fetus a baby, but inside the womb, they call a fetus a fetus.
Mm-hmm.
So until it crosses the threshold of the vagina and is born into the present, it's considered a fetus.
Mm-hmm.
So now you got baby out here and the rest of baby known as fetal property.
Right.
Still in the womb.
Mm-hmm.
The stuff that's in the womb is the rule of law or the measure. They now have a measure
Mm-hmm.
of baby. The measure of the man
Yes.
has been cut off.
The pound of flesh.
The pound of flesh.
The worth
But
is-
that measure is the corrective measure that the Department of Justice uses to make you whole again.
Yeah, because you're not whole.
You're not whole out here as baby.
Yeah.
You're actually an indigenous person on the land. You're a heathen.
Mm-hmm.
But when they have this other material that makes you whole, that perfects you, that makes you perfect, also innocent, by the way. When you're whole, you're innocent.
Yes.
They have the measures that were cut off of you that makes you perfect, that makes you innocent.
Mm.
Those are the corrective measures.
So that's the
And they have that on deposit.
and that's the salvage and the salvation.
That's the salvage and the salvation.
Mm-hmm.
You see how that works?
Mm-hmm.
So those measures are the rule of law that tie you or link you directly to God.
Mm-hmm.
They have that material as corrective measures on deposit.
Mm-hmm.
They get to correct you
As long as you keep saying yes.
as long as you agree
Mm-hmm.
to perform.
Mm-hmm.
They will put you back together,
Mm-hmm.
only to be broken later on. Again,
Mm-hmm.
catch and release.
Yep. Play the music and you stand up, and then you fall dead again.
It's really horrible
It is.
that they created a system. But again, most people don't care. We're in this trouble because most people really don't care, Linda.
I know.
They don't care about anything we're talking about. They don't care about reality one bit.
Mm-mm.
They want to be able to pretend that they're okay
Mm-hmm.
when they're actually defective from the beginning,
Yeah.
from the birthday.
From the birthday. From the party.
It goes on to say, in other words, the court is constructing. Believe it or not, when they're putting Humpty Dumpty back together again, when they're putting baby and extra embryonic back together again, that's the Reconstruction Acts of the Civil War.
Yes.
They're reconstructing the whole man, but they get an administrative fee to do it.
Mm-hmm.
These guys are priests.
Yep.
The guys wearing the robes are priests. They're considered. They actually consider themselves physicians putting you back together again. They're performing an operation, a reconstructive operation in the courtroom, making you whole again.
Yeah, it's forensic science, isn't it?
It's forensic medicine.
Mm-hmm.
It's forensics, which are called the courts of justice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's pretty sick.
It's pretty sick. But they're priests.
Yeah, well, it's not even pretty sick. It's completely sick.
Yeah, it's disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
It's disgusting that there are living people that would be this diabolically against their own kind.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to fathom there are people judging others for a paycheck.
Oh, look on page 681, the Latin, impotentia excusa legum.
Read it.
The impossibility of doing what is required by the law excuses from the performance. Wow.
In other words, they want me to perform the placenta.
Mm-hmm.
They want me to perform as the decedent estate.
Yep.
I love that line. Thank you. Mm-hmm. The impossibility of doing what is required by the law excuses from the performance. That's the word everybody should learn.
Yeah.
This is an impossibility.
It is an impossibility.
You want me to perform the decedent estate.
And it's impossibility and unjust enrichment. The two
and together. It's unjust enrichment for those that are even bringing this cause of action.
Yes.
That's huge.
Wow.
This cause of action is 100%. Every cause of action is unjust enrichment.
Yes, it is.
Every single time you get asked to show up in court is unjust enrichment.
Mm-hmm.
For the one bringing the cause.
Yep.
And it's an impossibility for you to perform.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's founded upon a decedent estate.
Yeah. Yep. And which requires extreme and unreasonable difficulty for you, because you have to be dead.
You have to be dead. You have to self-sacrifice. You have to sacrifice your own presence.
Mm-hmm.
Your own life in the present.
And that is all that you have is the present moment. That's it.
That's it.
That's it. Everything else is a story, past or future.
Wow. Let me see if there... Okay, let's just finish up with impossibility.
Mm-hmm. We're down at finally.
Oh, finally. Occurrence of the contingency must have rendered performance commercially impracticable. Although impossibility or impracticability of performance may arise in many different ways, the tendency has been to classify the cases into several categories. These are destruction, deterioration, or unavailability of the subject matter. There it is. Right. By the way, if you're still using it, if you're still using your biology,
there's no subject matter.
There is no subject matter for them to use for the decedent estate.
Nope, it's gone.
It's gone. You've removed it.
Mm-hmm. Their whole structure is destructed.
So it says these are destruction, deterioration, or unavailability of the subject matter or the tangible means of performance.
Wow.
2, failure of the contemplated mode of delivery or payment. Again, failure of the contemplated mode of delivery or payment.
Wow.
If they're delivering by a piece of paper the rest of your biology, think about that. First of all, if you remove the biology from the placenta, you have made it impossible for them to use the character born to that placenta.
Yes.
So there's going to be a failure of delivery.
Yeah.
They can't deliver that person to you because you're still using the biology that gave rise to that person in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
You're still using it.
Mm-hmm.
So their character doesn't exist.
Yep.
They can't deliver. They can't deliver at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And then 3 says supervening prohibition or prevention by law. 4, I don't know, it's supervening prohibition or prevention by law. 4, failure of the intangible means of performance. And 5, death or illness. The basic UCC sections dealing with impossibility of performance are 613 and 615. Wow. I love this idea of impossibility.
Yeah, it is true. How does everybody feel? Everybody feels this. It's impossible. You can't. It's the whole situation. Everything is impossible. It's impossible for you to function and perform. It just is. It's so awesome. Just find this. This is amazing.
Yeah, it is, and it all comes out of the idea of the unjust enrichment.
Yes.
Somebody made this shit up so they could make a living off of your death.
Yep. Parasites. Mm-hmm.
Parasites.
Yep.
This is the world of the dead living off of your living labor.
Mm-hmm.
And an entire society is built on it.
Yeah.
It's built on it. I'm trying to think.
Well,
I want to, if we have to do this a couple more times regarding the pizza.
mm-hmm.
I think that's so easy to understand that I'm going to go back to Investopedia.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I want to go to quasi-contracted Investopedia. I want to go through that whole page.
Okay.
Because I love the way they laid it out. Now we're going to end up back at the pizza probably a few times.
Yeah.
But let's go back to quasi-contract and see what Investopedia says about it to begin with. So I'm going to go to the top.
Mm-hmm.
Quasi-contract. It says, what is a quasi-contract? A quasi-contract is a retroactive arrangement between two parties who have no previous obligations to one another. Now think about that. I show up in a courtroom. I have no obligation to anybody in that room.
Mm-mm.
But somehow they construct one.
Mm-hmm.
They capture me inside that room and get me to agree to something in some weird way.
Yeah, I certainly experienced that. I mean,
Of course, yeah.
I even had the judge leave the room, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what the rules of the game were. I found out later I should have left too. But because I didn't, when she came back, she goes, well, I have subject matter jurisdiction over you now.
Right, because you stuck around.
Because I stayed. I didn't, that's how crazy it is.
It goes on to say it is created by a judge. Let me say that again. A quasi-contract is a retroactive arrangement between two parties who have no previous obligations to one another. It's created by a judge to correct a circumstance in which one party acquires something at the expense of another. The something is that placenta.
Mm-hmm.
That's the something.
Yeah.
So somebody ended up with this cut material in their possession.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's only two people that have a right to that placenta, me and my mom.
Mm-hmm.
But that placenta exists as a tertium quid or fetal-maternal organ only if
You don't know.
I'm no longer using my biology.
Right.
What must happen in order for me right now to not be using my biology?
You have to be dead.
I have to be dead. Mm-hmm. So in order for their placenta to have any weight at all, in order for their decedent state to exist, I have to be dead.
Yeah.
So the birth certificated person only exists if I agree to be dead.
Mm-hmm.
Well, don't I agree to be dead every 365 days by celebrating the birthday with a birthday party?
Yeah. So is that why they use quasi? Because, you can't have a contract with a dead person anyway. So.
Well, it says it's created by a judge to correct a circumstance.
Yeah.
Now, what's really weird about that? What is he correcting?
The cut, the split.
He's making you whole again.
Mm-hmm.
But what's really weird about that is by making you whole using their material,
you're dead.
You're dead. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. In order for you to be whole, to be completed through their process,
you have to agree to be dead.
You have to agree to be dead.
It's so fucking twisted.
That's why COVID, COVID, covered identity, that's why COVID had you 6 feet apart.
Mm-hmm.
That's 6 feet under.
So, remember, what was it that I went through? Chemise was a covering shirt. What was the word I started with? Chemise? Heaven! Heaven took me to chemise, which took me to a covering, a shirt. Fucking A.
Yeah, and that's what's funny is that shirt is, what's really weird is in college sports,
Mm-hmm.
when you sit out for a year,
Mm-hmm.
what do they call it?
When you're in sports?
When you're in sports and you're a college player,
Mm-hmm.
and you decide to sit out for a year and not play, you're planning on coming back, but you're sitting out. You're not a player this year.
I don't know.
It's called redshirting.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Now think about that.
Wow.
To redshirt is to be absent.
Wow. Wow, I didn't know that one. Wow.
Yeah. So you're redshirting, you're absent for the year. You're still on the team, so to speak, but you're not a player.
Right.
You're still on the team, so you're still subject to working out and doing all that stuff, but you're not playing.
Uh-huh. Wow.
That's redshirting.
Oh, wow. Wow.
I know, which is strange because the red shirt would also be the raspberry beret, the little red Corvette, or any of that other stuff where the lady in red, all that stuff, the handmaiden's tale dressed in red. The red is the wall of the uterus.
Right.
Hell, if you look up handmaiden, it'll say Mary, the mother of Jesus, but that is the wall of the uterus.
Right. Yeah. Wow.
That's the handmaiden.
Yeah.
So it goes on to say in quasi-contract, the contract aims to prevent one party from unfairly benefiting from the situation at the other party's expense. Again, first of all, it implies two parties.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Two, if I'm still using my biology, is there another?
Uh-uh.
No.
No.
There's only one. If my biology is whole from fertilization to last breath, there's only one of me. And if I'm still using it, if I'm still inspired, if I'm still breathing, then there is no decedent version of my biology.
Right. And the whole idea of the placenta being a tertium quid can't exist either because it has to be made out of two things that actually exist.
It has to be made out of both elements.
Mm-hmm.
If there's one element missing, it doesn't exist.
Mm-mm.
And again, 35 USC 101, where they're talking about a composition, a patentable composition of matter. If there's no composition of matter, and all there is my biology or my mom's biology, well, nature's not patentable.
Mm-mm.
They had to have the placenta viewed as something new, a 92 chromosome composition of matter, before they could actually patent it.
Right.
And that's what they did.
Mm-hmm.
They patented it, and it became a British denizen,
Mm-hmm.
subject to the king or the queen. These arrangements, I'm reading again, these arrangements may be imposed when goods, unborn of animals, when goods or services are accepted, though not requested by a party. So if I accept the birth certificate, I'm accepting goods.
Yeah.
It says the acceptance then creates an expectation of payment. So if I accept the birth certificated person, whoever is giving me that person is expecting payment.
Yeah.
Whether that's the IRS or some other form of payment, they're expecting it.
Yeah, and they keep expecting.
And they're going to keep expecting every year as long as you keep claiming that birth certificated character, that person.
Yep.
They're going to keep expecting payment.
Mm-hmm.
There's a key takeaways. A quasi-contract is a retroactive arrangement between two parties who have no previous obligations to one another. It is created by a judge to correct a circumstance in which one party acquires something at the expense of the other. The plaintiff must, think about this. If I acquire the birth certificated character, which is a patentable character, if I claim it, then the patent holder would actually could bring a cause of action against me.
Yeah, there would be a right there. Mm-hmm.
By the way, there is another legal term called what? Property.
Property.
I'm thinking of not intellectual property. What's the other one? Literary property.
Mm-hmm.
So the birth certificate is literature or literary, and literary property is, again, the owner of the property. If that character, the Curtis Richard Kallenbach, if that character is worn by me, if I cover myself with that character, then the biology that is the corporeal biology that is wearing that character is part of the claim.
Yeah.
As long as I'm wearing their character, I am subject to the owner of that character.
Yeah,
they can direct me.
I never got the heaven in there quite as close as today. That it be that it's the shirt.
It's the shirt that's why even Pink Floyd says, "Whose shirt you wear." Again, if I'm wearing the character of that composition of matter, the patent holder can play a tune that I have to dance to.
Yep.
If they bring a cause of action against me in court, I got to go to court. Now the problem is that I don't even know why I'm there, but because I used to think I was Curtis Richard Kallenbach. I know now that that's not my property, and I know now that that's a composition of matter that was patented. I know now that it more than likely is a British denizen. I know now that it's a communist character.
Mm-hmm.
It's a communal character. Mm-hmm. But again, what is a communal character? Isn't that commonly held property?
Yep.
Doesn't the common law rule over commonly held property?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So why would anybody choose the common law?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Especially since the common law does not recognize absolute ownership.
Right.
It works right. It plays right into the hands of the king,
yep,
or whoever's making the claim.
Mm-hmm.
The common law is a mistake.
Yep.
I don't have anything in common with you.
Mm-mm.
Other than these phone calls and the fact that we might love each other.
Right.
I don't have any physical biology. I don't have any biology in common. We don't have any property in common.
Nope.
Why would the common law apply to you and I?
It wouldn't.
It wouldn't.
Same with equity assumes two.
Equity assumes more than one
mm-hmm.
sharing a property.
Which is
if I'm the singular owner of my biology, there is no equity.
Mm-mm.
But if a piece of me is placed in a public depository, then I have a share of the public, and now I'm subject to the public.
Wow.
Even the Bible says, in the world, but not of it.
It really is impossibility, isn't it? It's just, it's like the whole creation can't, in reality, in truth, and nature, they can't coexist. It's just impossible.
It is an impossibility, and that's what this call's all about.
Yeah.
It's an impossibility. You can't be both dead and living. You can't perform the world of the dead, which is why I love Curtis R. Kallenbach,
yeah,
because Curtis R. is living, and the period separates the world from the living and the dead,
yeah,
but it allows for harmony between those two.
Yeah.
Where I don't have to perform the world of the dead.
And Curtis R. Kallenbach is impotita excusat legum. He doesn't have to perform.
No.
The law, the impossibility of doing what is required by law, excuses from the performance.
And that's why it's created for convenience and consistency.
Oh, fucking A. Yeah.
So without arguing, I can be a pacifist.
Yes.
And I can have Curtis R. Kallenbach, and that right there says, I'm not going to argue.
Mm-mm.
I'm not here to argue. I'm not going to fight over living and dead or anything like that. I'm a pacifist. But here it is right here. These worlds do not mix.
Mm-hmm.
But the period brings harmony to this statement.
Yes.
State of mind.
Yes.
Next it says, the plaintiff must have furnished a tangible item or service to another party with the expectation of implication that payment would be given. Now, let me ask you this. So a piece of me gets cut off.
Mm-hmm.
That's an act.
Yes.
Somebody performed an act of violence against me, which resulted in some of my biology dying off over there on its own.
Mm-hmm.
Still connected to mother's biology.
Mm-hmm.
If they performed a funeral service for that property,
wow,
could they be expecting
payment
for that funeral?
Yep, sure could.
So again, by cutting off that piece of me and maybe performing a funeral that I did not know happened. I didn't know that a piece of me died. I didn't know it was involved in a funeral, but somebody's expecting a payment for that service. That could be true too.
Mm-hmm.
I don't put anything past these monsters.
Well, once you're in the world of fiction, anything really is possible.
Hell, when they take a piece of your biology and throw it in the incinerator at the hospital as a biohazardous waste, and they reduce it by fire down to pure carbon, what's left?
666.
666, pure carbon.
Mm-hmm.
6 protons, 6 neutrons, 6 electrons. It's pure carbon. Now they got 666.
Mm-hmm.
And they did it by fire.
Yeah.
And yet it's your biology.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Reduced biology.
Yes.
And then finally it says the defendant must have accepted or acknowledged receipt of the item, but made no effort or offer to pay for it. So if I'm using the birth certificate or the birth certificated person, have I offered to pay for it?
Yeah, no.
No.
Oh, okay.
I assume it's me or mine.
Yeah.
What were you going to say?
Well, I just realized, when I went into court, I offered to pay. I offered to settle the matter for that situation. And that's when the judge got up and left.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's what I was trying to do. And then it all went wonky because I didn't leave. I didn't know what to do.
Oh, now it makes sense to me, too, though, is if you say, listen, I'm here to settle the matter.
Yeah.
If the judge got up and left, it's because you offered something she couldn't accept. There couldn't have been an offer acceptance because she didn't have the authority to do it. So when she left the room but came back and you were still standing there, something else occurred.
Yes, something else occurred. Yeah.
So, again, if you would have said, listen, I'm taking her leaving this room as her answer.
Right.
She didn't accept my offer.
Right. And that's what it would have ended, but I didn't know that. Again, I didn't know the rules of the game, but that makes sense. Well,
that's really interesting to me, Linda, because you made an offer to settle the matter.
Yes.
And by her abandoning the room or the case, in essence, she gave it back to you.
Yeah.
You became whole right there and then, or you were whole already.
Yeah.
What happened, though, is when I see that, what is an offer? Let's do this while we're on the phone. If somebody, is silence acquiescence?
According to the law.
If you make an offer and they don't answer you and leave the room, is that acquiescence? Did they accept your offer?
Yeah, and she accepted my offer, but I didn't know it.
To settle.
Wow. Yeah.
And it would have been settled right there and then had you walked out and say, listen, it's now settled. She accepted my offer through silence.
Yeah. Wow.
And then you would have just left.
Yep.
And who knows what would have happened after that.
Yeah.
But for the record, maybe that's what you would have had to have said.
Yeah.
For the record, the judge just left the room. She accepted my offer through her silence.
Yeah.
So I am now going to leave knowing this matter has been settled.
Yep. And I didn't know that yet. So.
Well,
but that's a good it's really good to analyze it now and to see what happened. Because I made the offer first to the prosecuting attorney because that's where they sent me. And he's the one that hauled me across into her court. I didn't have a court date, and so it was all done, in this big dramatic way with me having no time to think. And, and then I offered to settle it, and then she left. Yeah. Wow.
What's really weird, too, though, is when she left, that silence in my world would be acquiescence, but something else happened. She left that frame, that time, that present.
Yes, and then she came
back to another present.
Yes, and everybody.
See, I think that's the magic right there.
Yeah, that's the voodoo. Everybody stayed in the room but her, and then when she came back, it was a different story.
It was a different story, a different time frame.
Yep.
And as if it wasn't offered.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It goes on to say, the defendant must have accepted or acknowledged. Of course, we do that. Mm-hmm. Happy birthday.
Yep.
Thank you.
To the party.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Welcome to the party, the Communist Party.
Thanks for
understanding quasi-contracts. Here it goes. It says, quasi-contracts outline the obligation of one party to another when the latter is in possession of the original party's property.
Whoa.
Okay, so it says the latter. Who is the original party of your biology?
I am.
I absolutely. There is no way to. This is not up for discussion.
Mm-mm.
There's no debate here.
Mm-mm.
In possession, when the latter is in possession of the original party's property, these parties may not necessarily have had a prior agreement with one another. The agreement is imposed by law through a judge as a remedy when person A owes something to person B because they came into possession of person A's property indirectly or by mistake. The contract becomes enforceable if person B decides to keep the item in question without paying for it. Does everybody keep the birth certificated character?
Yep.
Does anybody offer to pay for that person?
No.
No. Because they think it's them.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody thinks the birth certificated person is them. Why would I have to pay for me?
Right. And when I went into that courtroom, I went in and said that I'm a party here to settle the matter for this I wasn't as clear as I could be now, but basically I was saying, I'm in here to settle a matter for this creature. But so I did offer to pay for it. Wow.
Now, the funny thing is there's no money to pay.
Right.
But since they took the money out of the system and the form of payment is subrogation or self-sacrifice,
mm-hmm.
I think that in a way what happened was when that judge left the room, you could have closed the door.
Yeah.
But when you stayed there, your staying there became a self-sacrifice.
And
that became your form of payment.
Yeah, and I did say I came to discuss the validity of subrogation. That was also in what I was trying to do there.
Oh, okay, so that word was brought into that.
It was brought into that, yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right, next paragraph says, because the agreement is constructed
Wow.
in a court of law, it is legally enforceable, so neither party has to agree to it. Once the judge constructs this thing, it's going forward.
Yeah, and that's what happened.
The purpose of the quasi-contract is to render a fair outcome in a situation where one party has an advantage over another. The defendant, the party who acquired the property, that's the one claiming the birthday, must pay restitution to the plaintiff, who is the wronged party, to cover the value of the item.
Uh-huh.
So again, we're wearing the clothing, we're wearing that chemise, that vest or whatever, we're wearing it.
That covered identity.
And it's the covered identity, the COVID. And what's interesting is that that's the combination or the placental material looked at as one, Jesus and Mary, which is the unum sanctum's human creature that the Pope has laid claim to. I believe that the birth certificated person, as a fetal-maternal Jesus and Mary, I believe it's the Roman Catholic Church that's bringing the charges.
Yeah, and that's what they're claiming back right now. Wow.
That's what they're trying to get back to Vatican City.
Wow.
Is they're trying to get all the birth certificated persons back, probably, into the fold.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is, biology is half mom and half baby.
Mm-hmm.
So their character, their human creature, unum sanctum 1302 human creature, they own none of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, it even says up here, the party who acquired the property.
Yeah.
It doesn't say they own it. It says they acquired the property.
Yep. Acquired. And they acquired it through an act of violence.
Yeah. Which even according to their own rules...
Ex injuria.
Mm-hmm.
Ex injuria just non orator,
mm-hmm.
where acts of violence can't give rise to rules of law or rules.
Right.
Now it goes on to say, a quasi-contract is also known as an implied contract. It would be handed down ordering the defendant to pay restitution to the plaintiff. The restitution, known in Latin as quantum meruit, that's the restitution,
mm-hmm.
or the amount earned, is calculated according to the amount or extent to which the defendant was unjustly enriched. So, we're using the birth certificated person.
Mm-hmm.
And they're saying that we're unjustly being enriched
mm-hmm.
by using their character.
Right.
When in reality...
they're being unjustly enriched by stealing our property.
By taking it right off the bat.
Yeah.
And they're actually saying that we owe them when in fact it's us.
Yeah, it's the switch and bait.
Yep.
That's right there. It's the switch and bait. Yeah.
I'm going to go to quantum meruit.
Okay.
I got it somewhere around here probably. I'll just go to it at Wiki.
Okay.
Quantum meruit. Quantum meruit.
Okay. No.
You're at Wiki?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I know where it was. It was in your Wiki originally with unjust enrichment because I looked it up earlier.
Yeah. Yeah. And look what it says. Quantum meruit is a Latin phrase meaning what one has earned. This is so obvious now. So isn't the birth certificated person tied to a social security number?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't the only way that you can get a job is to give the social security number?
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, what one has earned through the birth certificated social security numbered person, that person belongs to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
It says what one has earned. So quantum meruit says what one has earned. In the context of contract law, it means something along the lines of reasonable value of services. In the United States, the elements of quantum meruit are determined by state common law.
Wow.
There's your Commonwealth or your In God We Trust.
Mm-hmm.
So we're all in this together. Well, no, we're not. Don't put a piece of me into the public trust or into a public DNA pool and pretend that I'm going to benefit. Now we're right back to where we started today.
Mm-hmm.
Don't deliver a pizza to my house or leave it on the porch and say that you delivered me this benefit.
Right.
That's what they did with the birth certificated person. They take my biology, the part that's still connected to mom, they create a patentable person off of it, and then they send it to me and say, this is your birth certificate. And then I celebrate happy birthday every 365 days for the rest of my life, which looks like I accepted the benefit.
Yeah. So it looks like you've been enriched.
By their character.
By their character.
When in fact, their character only exists because of an act of violence initiated against an innocent newborn.
Yes.
Okay. It says in the United States, quantum meruit are determined by state common law. For example, to state a claim for unjust enrichment in New York, a plaintiff must allege that one, defendant was enriched, and two, the enrichment was at plaintiff's expense. And three, the circumstances were such that equity and good conscience required defendants to make restitution. Equity. If I am whole, W-H-O-L-E, and no piece of me is a party to the placental tertium quid, am I part of an equity?
No.
No. If I'm whole, I am not party to an equity.
Mm-mm.
And that's where all of these other morons out there want to talk equity.
Mm-hmm.
Because they don't understand that equity implies a piece of them broken off, cut off, and placed into a public pool.
Right, and as soon as you agree to that, then you're on the other side of the phantom toll booth.
You're on the other side. Absolutely.
You're
now,
in the game.
And that's a decedent estate.
Yeah, you've already.
So again, any patriot moron out there selling his wares based upon equity is going to keep you in trouble.
Yeah.
You'll never get to truth if you keep listening to these patriot idiots.
Mm-hmm.
Equity's a bad thing for a living man.
Yeah.
I mean, even my own 23 chromosome sperm that joined with my ex-wife's 23 chromosome ovum to create a 46 chromosome son.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have an equity in my son because when the sperm and ovum at the process of fertilization became a brand new, unique 46 chromosome entity, I don't have an equity in that.
Mm-mm.
So I don't even have an equity in my own son.
Mm-mm.
Because my 23 chromosomes do not exist in him.
Mm-mm. Nope.
We don't have an equity in any other.
Mm-mm.
And we need to stop thinking we do.
Yep.
Quantum merit is the measure of damages where an express contract is mutually modified by the implied agreement of the parties. There's implied agreement. There's your quasi-contract.
Yep.
That is basically where this unjust enrichment call began.
Mm-hmm.
Quantum merit. This is really cool. Situations. Quantum merit is the measure of damages where an express contract is mutually modified by an implied agreement of the parties or not completed. Let me say that again. Quantum merit is the measure of damages where an express contract is mutually modified by the implied agreement of the parties or not completed. While there is often confusion between the concept of quantum merit and that of unjust enrichment of one party at the expense of another, the two concepts are distinct. Look at this. The concept of quantum merit applies in, but is not limited to, the following set of situations. I'm not going to do a whole lot. There's only two of them here. It says, when a person hires another to do work, but an impeding act falling short of vitiating, frustration, repudiation has occurred, such as access or intervening act of God. Think about that. When I go back to fertilization, am I introducing an act of God?
Absolutely.
So I've just vitiated or negated that perceived contract.
Yep.
When I go back to an act of God, I have eliminated their birth certificated person, haven't I?
Yep.
Yep. It says the worker may sue or countersue for the value of the improvements made or services rendered. Think about that. So I go to a job all my life under a birth certificated character that is born to a quasi-contract, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's presumed.
Mm-hmm.
I made all the money with my energy.
Mm-hmm.
They're basically saying all of that is ours because of Unjust enrichment, the potential for unjust enrichment. You made all that money, you bought all those things using our character.
Yeah.
You were unjustly enriched by our birth certificated person.
Which is a patentable now. So.
Right, but here's the neat thing is, even though that's a true statement and they're gonna deny, you're gonna lose. You can't win that case because you're actually wearing the clothing, the shirt, the chemise, the character of their birth certificated person, aren't you?
Yep.
You can't win that. But you made improvements. You've turned that waste material into a profitable enterprise, didn't you?
By going to work.
By going to work.
Okay.
So now you have a case. You actually can sue for those improvements.
Ah.
There's a couple other cases out there that make this very clear. What I'm getting at is you'll lose on the one side, but if you say, hey, listen, I worked for this company for 40 years, and I improved the value of their character. I improved their land. I improved upon it through my service. That's when you can get some restitution. But you can't do it the other way. It goes on to say the measure of value set forth in a contract is legally admissible as evidence of the value of the improvements or services, but the court, or thus out-of-court settlement, is not required to use the contract's terms. Again, the contract's terms would be the Social Security agreement and all that stuff. But you made improvements upon their character, upon their land. And now you can sue for those improvements, because of those improvements. Now, again, that's still presuming you want to play.
Right.
I say go back to fertilization and negate through the act of God, the act of creation itself. Just eliminate all this nonsense. Let them fall on their own swords. It says, because the values set forth in the contract are rebuttable, meaning the one who ultimately may have to pay the award can contest the value of services set in the contract. Again, that's all based upon somebody else's ownership of the birth certificated person.
Right.
Because that's what we're arguing over. People don't realize, and I had this conversation with somebody last night, but private property is untaxable. Private property is untaxable. So how are they able to tax your income? It's because you're using the shirt, the character of another person, and that Social Security number, you're using somebody else's property to go to work.
Well, and that's how many years ago did you say? It's all about whose property is it and who can prove it?
That's it. Whose property is it and who can prove it? If it's fully private, if it's private from fertilization to last breath, everything earned through that property is private property and untaxable. But if you're wearing the birth certificated person, now you have a quasi-contract presumed by the court. Somebody delivered a pizza to your house, somebody delivered a birth certificate to your house, and you've been wearing that. You ate the pizza. You're wearing the character.
So let's take the example of the driver's license and you getting one and having Curtis R. period Kallenbaugh on that and using that for convenience and consistency. And because you're here from fertilization to last breath, then you are in control of that. Is that correct?
Right. I signed it properly, Curtis R. period Kallenbach. Also, remember that the driver's license, when the foreign patent holder or owner and the end user merge.
Yes.
There is no contest. There is no cause of action.
Yeah.
I would never bring a court case against myself.
Right.
If I am the biological owner of the estate that gave rise, you know what I mean? Then I don't really require a driver's license.
Right.
So when the user of the license and the owner of the property that was being licensed become one, then the driver's license is not detrimental.
Right.
I would never bring a cause of action against myself.
Which is essentially by eliminating this, everything we've talked about today, it's the same thing. You're not going to bring a cause of action against yourself because you're whole, and you can prove that they don't have any right to be unjustly enriched from.
And that's why Chapter 12, 67th Congress says when both terminal ends, that's the baby on one end and the extra-embryonic on the other end of the umbilical cord, when both terminal ends of the cable arrive to the continent as one, there's no license requirement.
Right.
So when you're WHOLE, when you're whole, the license becomes unnecessary. Even if you carry it, it's not detrimental.
Right. Because it shows that both terminal ends are there. Yeah.
Yes, and that's why the best thing to do is like you're doing, or what the effort you're making, you hand both a passport and the driver's license at the same time, or the passport card and the driver's license at the same time if you ever get stopped,
right.
Because that evidence is both terminal ends.
Right, and I just have to correct them from changing my application.
Yeah, you might just want to write out a memoir as an amendment and say, listen, this is the truth of the matter.
Yeah.
Whatever you're doing has to abide by this truth.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, and finally it says, when there is an express contract, this again is quantum root, when there is an express contract for a stipulated amount and mode of compensation for services, the plaintiff cannot abandon the contract and resort to an action for a quantum root on an implied assumpsit. But what's weird is, remember that if it's all your property, if the biology that gave rise to that character and you, the living, breathing woman, if it's all one biology, then there is not two positions. There would not be a plaintiff and a defendant if you're both positions.
Right.
You would not bring a cause of action against yourself.
Yeah.
It goes on to say, however, if there is an absence of any promised consideration, think about that. If there's an absence of any promised, well, that implies a promise, and B, consideration, something deposited. If there is an absence of any promised consideration, the plaintiff, such as the hirer, has a right to elect to repudiate the contract and, failing a valid frustration, innocent mistake, reason, or similar defense, has the right to compensation from the defendant on a quantum root basis. Again, promised consideration. Promised, meaning an agreed upon.
Yeah.
So I promise to give you this as consideration in return for access to this whatever or to this character. Now that is not the same thing as having a pizza delivered to my house and me eating it and consuming that pizza. The reality is if I say I don't want your birthday party character, I'm still using the living, breathing body. I don't require the decedent to stay. I'm placing nothing on deposit. I make no promises.
Yep.
All of this becomes nonsensical.
Right. So the pizza, if pizza is basically every year when we eat our birthday cake and celebrate in the birthday party, we are eating it thinking it's free, but then we've agreed we haven't paid the price yet. We haven't paid it.
And they can call you in at any moment.
At any moment. Any of their 50 billion laws they can call you in on. Yeah.
For any reason whatsoever, you're already guilty. I mean, This is why the movie Minority Report is so amazing.
Yeah.
First of all, it's a minority report. It's the report on the cut material, the deposit. It's only on the minority report. It's not on the majority.
Right.
Because the only one that is subject to administrative process is the minor.
Yes.
If you're whole, if you're of the majority,
well, then
there is no minority.
Right.
And there's no administrative process.
If you're whole, there is no majority and minority. There just is one.
Right. And if you're whole, then a piece of you is not out there to be delivered separately. Again, what's the medical definition of delivery? Is a fetus and its membranes.
Mm-hmm.
If all of you is delivered as one unit, then there is no part of you that's available to be delivered at a later date.
Right.
Through a birth certificated representative.
The stork with the mailman's hat.
Yeah, the stork wearing the mailman's hat.
Yep. Wow.
That's the delivery of that fictional child.
Yep.
The paper child.
Sure.
The paper doll.
Yep. Sure is.
Okay, back to quasi contracts at Investopedia.
Okay.
It says these contracts are also referred to as constructive contracts, as they are created when there is no existing contract between the two parties involved. If there is an agreement already in place, though, a quasi-contract generally cannot be enforced. Again, a real agreement where everybody knows what they know and they agree to the terms.
Yeah.
Remember that even in The Godfather, when he says, I want you to make him an offer he can't refuse. You can refuse anything except one thing.
Death.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody says, if you don't agree to these, I'm going to kill you.
Right.
You can still say, go ahead and kill me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm refusing.
Mm-hmm.
You can refuse anything.
Mm-hmm.
Unless what?
Unless you don't know about it.
Unless you don't know about it.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't know an offer was made, or if something was made on your behalf when you were an infant and you never heard of it before, if you don't know that the birth certificated person is an offer, if you don't know anything about it, then you can't refuse it.
Nope.
And that's what the Godfather Pope did.
Yep.
He created a offer that you not only don't refuse, you celebrate it.
Yep. Yep.
Out of ignorance.
Yep.
And now you're bound to that system, to that banking system, to that form of payment, which is your blood.
Yep. It's the ultimate voodoo, really. It is amazing.
And what's really funny about blood is blood carries what?
Life.
It
Oxygen.
carries life, but it carries life through oxygen.
Oxygen. Mm-hmm.
So it's the oxygen, it's the breath itself in the blood that gives life to the body.
Yes.
No oxygen, no breath, no oxygen, no life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how they, red blood, blue bloods.
Mm-hmm.
The red blood is oxygenated, the blue blood is deoxygenated, but it is a circulatory system. So when the oxygen is depleted, it goes back through the lungs, it gets reoxygenated, and now it's circulatory.
Mm-hmm.
Life is circulatory inside the body.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're cut off and there's the returning blue blood doesn't get reoxygenated, that's called death.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they did with our decedent estate. When they cut off the umbilical cord, when they left that part of you behind, it died.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my favorite part of this, it says, example of quasi-contract. Again, a classic quasi-contract circumstance may be created by the delivery of a pizza to the wrong address.
Mm-hmm.
That is, not to the person who paid for it.
Mm-hmm.
If the individual at the incorrect address fails to fess to the error and instead keeps the pizza, they could be seen as having accepted the food and thus be obliged to pay for it. When we accept a birth certificated person, we've accepted the terms of that person.
Mm-hmm.
But the birth certificated person, it is my belief, is based upon the human remains or the afterbirth.
Mm-hmm.
The afterbirth gives rise to a representation of the afterbirth called birth certificated person.
Mm-hmm.
The afterbirth itself is a fetal-maternal organ, Jesus and Mary, which is what the Roman Catholic Church has founded their entire Christianity belief system upon.
Yep.
Jesus and Mary.
Mm-hmm.
So they're saying that the story of Jesus and Mary, based upon the human creature left behind at birth, is their story,
mm-hmm.
his story,
mm-hmm.
history.
Mm-hmm.
If we accept his story, the only form of payment that is allowed or acceptable is my story.
Yes.
And my story, pronounced another way, is mystery.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go to the word mystery at Webster's. M-Y-S-T-E-R-Y-D-E-F. Mystery. And there it is. So his story, history, is not my story, mystery.
Mm-mm.
If I don't even know my own story, it is a mystery.
Mm-hmm.
Or if I've taken his story and replaced my story with his story, or allowed my story to go on deposit, my story on deposit, remember, I have to sacrifice, right?
Mm-hmm.
In order for me to gain history, I have to sacrifice my own present.
Mm-hmm.
Well, look what it says here. Mystery, something not understood or beyond understanding, an enigma. B, a piece of fiction dealing usually with the solution of a mysterious crime. Mysterious crime, a crime involving a mystery.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And again, the cutting of the umbilical cord is a violent crime that produced a mystery. And what is that mystery? It says, C, a secret or specialized practices or ritual peculiar to an occupation or a body of people. D says obsolete, a private secret. Number 2 says profound, inexplicable, or secretive quality or character. 3A says a religious truth that one can know only by revelation and cannot fully understand. 1B says any of the 20 events such as the nativity, the crucifixion, or the assumption, serving as a subject for mediation. Look at that. Serving as a subject for mediation during the saying of the rosary. 3B2, a mystery capitalized is what?
A Christian sacrament.
And finally, 3B2, specifically, it says what?
The Eucharist.
And the Eucharist is what? The body and blood of Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And there it is right there. So the mystery is the Eucharist.
Mm-hmm.
The Eucharist is your biology.
Mm-hmm.
So so what is expected? It's expected that you sacrifice your own biology, your own mystery. It becomes a mystery to you.
Yeah.
Because you don't know any of this is going on, but now you've been sacrificed and you live through the history, his story, the past, the sacrificial lamb.
Well, it becomes, you become unknown to yourself.
Yeah, I like when people say, man, we're going to make history. Man, you already have.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, back to...
So,
go ahead. You're gonna...
mystery, one of the definitions down here is to close or shut. It actually says to see mute.
Oh, yeah, so synonyms for mystery are closed book, conundrum, enigma, head scratcher, mystification, puzzle, puzzlement, riddle, secret, and why. But you're right. Let me just finish. There's a couple other here.
Sure.
3C1 says a secret religious rite to impart enduring bliss to the initiate, as in initial.
Mm-hmm.
3C2 says a cult devoted to such rites.
Mm-hmm.
Number 4 says the mystery play. What is the mystery play? It says a medieval drama based upon scriptural incidents such as the creation of the world, the flood, or the life and death and resurrection of Christ. That's a mystery play, and that's playing out in the courtroom, isn't it? Right?
Yes.
I mean, that's what they're playing. That's the theater. It's the mystery play.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last one says, the noun says archaic, a trade or craft. Wow. Now, trade or craft could be a small boat or a vessel.
Right.
And then finally it says number 2 for noun, archaic, a body of persons engaged in a particular trade, business, or profession, a guild.
Wow, it's a mystery, huh?
Yeah.
Wow.
And a guild says it's an association of people with similar interests or pursuits, especially a medieval association of merchants.
Yep.
Or craftsmen. And then guild also says, number 2, a group of organisms that use the same ecological resource in a similar way. Again, in the womb, the zygote, the conceptus, a group of organisms that use the same ecological resource as in placenta. The same way or similar way. Don't we all use the placenta in a similar way? So again, there's a lot to it, but you gotta really simplify this. Again, quasi-contract, ultimately the idea of unjust enrichment. Have you taken advantage of the birth certificated person? Well, you could say that the only way to get a job and earn the wages of sin is to actually use the birth certificated person, because that's the person that has a social security number. That's the only way to get a job.
Yeah.
There is no other way, but that is, I should pronounce job properly, Job, but that person is the only way to earn a living.
Yes. But isn't it interesting that you have to earn your living instead of living?
Instead of just living.
Yes.
Yeah, I think this is pretty amazing. I love that pizza idea because, again, if I'm looking right at my front door, a guy shows up, he has a pizza box in his hand. I open the door, he hands it to me. Why? Because it's already paid for. Somebody else paid for that pizza. But that somebody else that paid for it did not get the pizza.
Yeah.
So I'm eating a pizza that has been paid for by somebody or has been made by somebody that has a cost. Down the road, I might get another knock on my door with a summons or a subpoena that says, hey, somebody wants you to show up in court because they want you to pay for the pizza. Well, guess what? If I accept a birth certificated person the same way through the mail or whatever, down the road, I might get a summons or a subpoena to a court action that says somebody wants you to pay for that person.
Yep, it's clear.
The beautiful thing is, it's an impossibility. I can't perform that person because if I do, the cost is my life.
Yeah.
That person is dead. You want me to perform as a dead person? That's an impossibility.
It is an impossibility.
And that's the key. I think that's the key takeaway to this whole call.
Yeah, it is really an impossibility.
It's an impossibility. Do you want to go ahead?
Well, no. So we've got unjust enrichment and impotente excusat legem. The impossibility of doing what is required by law excuses one from a performance.
And there it is right there. I think, remember that those courtrooms are, that's where you're expected to perform.
Yes, and impossibilum nulla obligito est. There is no obligation to do impossible things.
I love that. That's a perfect place to end.
Yep.
Because it is all about the impossibility.
It is.
The decedent estate precludes your ability to perform it.
Yeah, and that's part of what makes people even give up, because it is all impossible. It is impossible.
It is impossible.
It is impossible. No wonder most people just throw up their hands and go drink a beer, because, you know?
That sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, except you don't drink beer anymore, do you?
Well, not yet. But I will be. I'm going right back to work. I want to get, like I said, I want to get this thing printed.
That's exciting.
Today's Tuesday. I want this part of it completely printed and bound so I can look at it by Friday.
Yay.
And then the front end of it is going to be done, and I guarantee that this whole damn thing will be in the publisher's hands next week sometime.
Woohoo!
Yeah, it's gonna be a bitch to get it done that fast, but I really, really want it done.
Mm-hmm.
So
You're
it can
not
be,
the only one.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm just even the pages I thought I edited very well. I'm looking at them separately, and there's shit that needs to be done. So I'm gonna get right back to it right now.
Yeah.
So.
All right.
Alrighty, lady, love you. Thank you very much. Get this over to me and I'll post it.
I will do that.
All right, have a great day.
You too.
Say hi to Becky and bye to Becky at this point.
Hi, bye, Becky.
All right, talk to you.
Mm-hmm.